How's it going, everybody? This is the uncanny Omar from this channel, Near Mint Condition. And I'm not alone. I have gathered some wonderful folks across the world. Yes, I said world, even though a few of us are from Kentucky. Top row, Kentucky, represent. Look at that. Hey, sorry about the late start. One of us had some internet issues. I'm not going to say any names, though, because I'm not like that. But it's definitely not the folks from Kentucky. It's definitely not the folks from Kentucky. We did not have any problems. But I am going to let my panelists introduce themselves. We'll start with Wonder Maddie, in case you don't know who she is. We should by now. And then we'll go around. So, Who are you, young lady?
Hi, it's me, the young lady, Wonder Maddie here. Long-time part of this channel, and I host OBR New Reader on Tuesdays. And I'll also be one of your hosts of the Saturday show while Omar's gone.
Yes, thank you so much for that. I'm actually joining you this Tuesday for Nightfall, Batman Nightfall, Omnibus, Volume 1. Woo! Can't wait to talk about it. So you can find her here on this channel, but she also has a show with this other young lady over here to my right.
Every Sunday at 11, usually.
Who are you?
Right. Usually. Some people call me the Comic Slayer, but my name is Kristen. My claim to fame may be that Larry's my dad, but other than that, I do have a YouTube channel. We talk about a lot of non-Big Two books, some other Big Two books too. I mean, we do everything. And by we, I mean me and my great husband, Reed Chancellor. You can check out his books. He's a comic artist and he's wonderful. So check him out there. Also, I do a Thursday show with Mary M., who you may know from the chat. So we do a live reading update where we often talk about books we get from the library and other things.
Oh, and you also do...
Kristen's cats are famous, by the way.
That is true.
Oh, they are?
I do have a Twitter famous cat. Yeah. Her name is One-Eyed Willow on Twitter. Check her out. She's very cute.
But James, can you pop that up? And you're also on a show with a good friend of the channel.
People know him. Omnidog's Vault. Yeah, that's right. The Omnidog and Omnicat show. You may know me as Omnicat there. I have many aliases, I guess.
You won't let you carry over your Comic Slayer name? You got to put a copyright on that, Kristen.
I should. You're right. So and I will say,
go ahead.
You can check out my last video on the channel where we have an announcement that I'm pregnant. So that's why videos have slowed down. So just heads up to that. But you can check that out. And, you know, I have baby registry in the description if you feel like sending us diaper wipes.
Well, congratulations. I know I've said it before on messaging, but congratulations. And Mary was summoned. Yes. So let's go. Who's the good-looking, young, handsome man below you? Who is that guy? Larry, who are you, buddy?
Hey, I am Larry. My channel is Larry's Library. I'm responsible for 50% responsible for bringing her into the world. So you're welcome.
I'm not sure you even get that percentage, but
science, baby. That's science.
I'm in there somewhere, but
the fighting starts now.
Yeah. I've been reading comics and collecting most of that time since, let's see, probably 1978. So I have a lot of opinions, and I'm more of a Marvel guy than anything, but well, you'll see. I read stuff other than Marvel. And
you do.
So in my show, I show off my collection. I profile different books and different aspects of collecting and reading. And I also do a show with Jess, because everyone does, right? Mine is the book club, which is usually once a month, the last Sunday of the month, typically. And me and Chris do a show together once a month, also on Saturday.
I think everybody here does a show with Jazz. He invites me for his toy shows. I don't think he can do shows alone. I've never seen him do a show alone. No, Curtis doesn't. Curtis is way too busy. Because what do you do, Curtis? Who are you?
My name is Curtis. I do not do a show with Jess just because he's never asked me, though. So come on, Jess. What's going on?
Yes.
So anyway, I'm Curtis, and I have my own podcast that is in hiatus at the moment. It's called the Epic Marvel Podcast. I'm known as a guy that loves epic collections, but spoiler alert, I have no epic collections in my picks for this live stream here. My tastes are wide and varied, and you'll see when I start talking about them. So I'm glad to be here, and with all of these wonderful people, a lot of people I've never live streamed with before. So this is very cool.
Yeah, this is really cool. I like this. We may have another panelist showing up soon, But we will see. We will see. What about you, Crisis? Who are you? You are usually the maniac of these particular themes.
I, Crisis of the K, broadcasting you from New Zealand early on Monday morning here. I have a home on the internet called crushingcrisis.com. Crisis with a K, crushing with a C, where I write about largely Marvel and DC comic books. So this is really exciting for me because I love indie comic books too. And I have been reading comic books with my daughter since I could first prop her up under my arm and hold a comic with the opposite hand. And so I have drawn a lot of my picks today from her collaboration with me on choosing the 5 and to see what everybody. Although I will say it was not one of the rules that things had to be all ages. We'll get more into that in a moment. Also, established some Omnidog lore this past week that he may have a beef with Curtis because Jeff keeps all of his epic collections hidden off screen. I didn't even know that he owned any. And I was like, is that because you hate Canada, Jess? And Jess would neither confirm nor deny. So I just want to bring everybody up to speed who doesn't follow the entire Near Mint Condition and Friends cinematic universe of what's going on here. Also, I've yet to be a guest on the Epic Marvel podcast, but I'm sure we'll remedy that sometime after the host hiatus is over.
You bet, absolutely.
And last but not least is the gentleman all the way at the bottom. Who are you, Bunk Master? This isn't the first time being on Near Mint Condition, but just in case people aren't familiar with who you are and what you do.
Yeah. What it do, comic babies? I'm Bunk Master B, and today we are here to delay internet streams with our shoddy Wi-Fi. And then when we're not doing that, we're also going to talk about some books. You can find me online where I make videos when I have find time not raising my own daughter and a monster of a son. And I am also part of the extended Omnidog Jess universe, where I am the monthly host of Crime Corner with him, where we read the chat, get way behind in chat, and occasionally we talk about crime books that are going on. And apparently today I'm here to fight with Mr. Crushing Crisis about our comic book opinions. So I'm here to wear tank tops and put up my dukes.
I love it. And I guess, yes, happy Father's Day to all the panelists and happy Father's Day to everybody out there. I did not mean to schedule this at this moment, but I'm glad that people were able to come together regardless. I completely forgot. Actually, it was my wife that reminded me. She's like, that Sunday is Father's Day, right? I'm like, oh, well, it's a good thing I'm not a selfish jerk. So, yeah, that was I completely forgot. So, thank you all for being here. This I mentioned this a little bit before we got started. I think this is probably the most important stream I'm gonna have this year so far, because this is very near and dear to me. Like I feel like graphic literature is very important in classrooms. Like my wife, who's been teaching for over a decade, has always had comics in the classroom, and it was a strong believer in kids reading in the classroom. And that kind of got into the subject of like, well, let's check out our local library and see what they have. And then my good friend Maddie and our good friend Heather, who is in charge of ordering books, asked me 3 months ago, maybe 4 months ago, what 10 books should I buy because I'm limited to a budget. And that kind of it spiraled into this because I thought I got this. And it took me 3 months to curate my personal list. And I went through some changes. I was like, okay, I can't. And then I said, there's not a single Chris Claremont book in here. There's not a single Duck book. So I would add something from Carl Barks. I would add something from Don Rosa or God Loves Man Kills. And it was, let me tell you, I mean, you read enough comics over time. And even for somebody that's reading it just a couple of years, reading comics, you just have so many of your favorites that you want to, if somebody asked you what are the 10 books you would put in a library, you would probably immediately know, even if you've been reading for a year. But it was difficult. So I curated it, and now I decided to assemble a wonderful list of panelists. And at the very end, whatever the 10 books we decide on, I will be donating it to the library. And I encourage every one of you, even if you see a book or that you love that we do not have on this list, you take that book and you buy it and you go donate it to your public library, because it's not just about kids too, right? Which is Crisis said a little bit earlier. But before I go any further, the last panelist that showed up. How's it going, brother?
Hey, so sorry. Can you hear me all right?
Yeah.
Am I coming
Yes,
through?
you
You're
are
great.
good. We can
Yeah,
hear you. You
great,
look great.
great. I got the time completely confused, and I thought it was at 5:30 in the morning, so I was setting my alarm, and I got the notification for this live stream starting on YouTube, and that's how I knew I had decided.
Oh,
Oh no.
well, thank you for subscribing. Did you hit the like button?
I'll get to it as soon as I'm all caught up on what I'm supposed to be doing, but I'm so glad I could make it. So sorry for being late.
No, you are okay. And time, oh my gosh, yeah. I don't even know how Peter keeps up with our time. He's in New Zealand, and I have no idea how he does it. Like, he puts things on my calendar on my time to make my life easier. And I'm like, I don't know how you do this. But I'm so glad you're here, man. Who are you? Tell everybody where you're from. I know we've done a video together in the past, but in case you're not familiar with his channel, it is an amazing channel.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Anshuman. I'm in New Delhi, India, and I run the channel For the Love of Comics. And thank you very much. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here.
Oh, I when I thought of this, I was like, oh, I gotta get him in here. So I'm so glad you finally.
I think we had a disagreement the last time I was on, and you figured out the perfect way to torture me with this category.
Me having a disagreement with a panelist? Never.
No, this is a great revenge.
Yeah, I cannot wait to discuss these books. So I am going to give the spotlight to Crisis. He's going to take over to talk a little bit about the rules and what we're doing exactly in case you're watching this live. And thank you all so much for being here, by the way. And a happy Father's Day to everybody again, in case you're coming in late.
All right, folks, let's talk about Fight Club. So for those of you who have seen, and Omar, if you want to bring up the slides, we have our couple of introductory ones there. For those of you who've seen one of our shows like this before, this Evergreen show has some specific definitions and rules to it. Part of that is, what is Evergreen? When we're talking about Evergreen, when it comes to Marvel and DC, we're usually talking about which they keep in print eternally, which they keep reprinting, which should never be off the shelves. But for this, we're talking about really the shelves at the local library. What are the books that we each personally really feel like the library should always have in stock and should always have ready to be loaned to a new generation of comic readers, as well as the readers who already love comics? So that is what Evergreen means to us today for this show. And the rules for this show, Omar, if you can go 2 down, are a little bit tweaked from the regular shows because there's just such a huge world of comics that we could choose from. So instead of just picking 3, today we each picked 5. And not only did we pick 5, we didn't just pick single books. So we were all invited that if there was a volume of something, if there was a book with several volumes that was completed or ongoing, that we could nominate the whole series of books to be on our list. So that means there are 40 possible picks coming from the panel today. No one shared their picks prior to the stream aside from me putting together the slides before this. Omar didn't even look at them. And we're going to have 3 rounds of discussion. First, we're going to go through and tell everybody why we picked what we picked. Then we're going to discuss why we might be interested in checking them out from the library. Some of us might already love checking these books out. Some of us might be like, I don't know, I don't have my library card out yet. And then finally, we will vote for the books that we are most likely to each reserve from the library to find out what our Evergreen list will be. Is everyone ready for a brand new Evergreen Rumble?
Absolutely.
Starting with a newbie in the ring here in the Evergreen show. We're going to hear the 5 choices from Bunk Master B.
So we're starting with Bunk, huh? Okay, we're gonna put him at the very top. Hope you survived the experience, buddy.
Let's do this thing. Let's get in the octagon. Nope. Let's go back to Love of Comics.
No. Go ahead. He's
Okay.
got to get ready. We will come back. To For the Love of Comics. You kick it off.
Okay. So when I went into this list, a lot of what I did here is I thought about my experience that I had growing up with comics at the library. So I'm someone that grew up super rural. I didn't have a comic shop around. Like when I was really young, the drugstore in town would occasionally get an issue of Archie or Turtles, and then they stopped even getting that. And so really, I didn't get super into comics until later when I had access through my library. And I kind of thought about, sort of the ways that I got into comics from that and want to replicate that for other people. And that's going to happen in different ways. So if we're going from right to left, left to right, that's the one. We're going to start with one of my favorite books of all time, Blankets. This is a seminal book about the author, Craig Thompson, his first real relationship. And it touches on themes of self-discovery. It touches on your first relationship in a way that is so familiar, to the point that anyone who had that, that main high school significant other, like, you're going to see yourself in here. It's going to look at things about growing up and questioning your beliefs that have there. It's so endemic to sort of the teenage and the young person who's growing up and kind of becoming their own person from the person that their parents had them do, that I think it has to be part of it. Next up, I want to do a book that is great for both kids and for adults. And we're doing Bone here. This has to be in everyone, because anyone can pick this up and adore it. This is a humongous, grand adventure that's great for kids, great for adults. If you have any 90s kids, hashtag only 90s kids remembers. This was published in Disney Adventures magazine, those little digest size. So you already have some familiarity. It's this wonderful adventure that no matter who you are, you're going to be able to pick this up and get something out of. So even though Omar said, I'm an indie guy, I want to make sure that I have things to sort of get people to the library and keep them there. A lot of these books we're going to look at, and they're going to be sort of quote unquote library classics. But I want to grab that kid who isn't going to necessarily be interested about a coming of age story about a first relationship or sort of a cultural identity touch point. I want someone who says, I want to read some superhero comics. And that's why we've got Miss Marvel from G. Willow Wilson. Now, this could be a few different things. I think something like Miles Morales is a perfect example for this, but I think there's no better comic that touches on sort of so many touch points right now as Miss Marvel. So you get almost sort of a new Spider-Man where it's speaking to sort of the challenges of being a young person, but you have it from different standpoints. You have it from her being a Muslim in a predominantly white community and what that means, how she preserves her identity. You look at it from her being a young woman who doesn't look like everybody else in a situation where you're encouraged to be skinny and blonde. And how do you navigate those feelings, and what do you do there? And through her power, she learns to kind of deal with all of those things. She's also got some familiarity with the fact that she's in the Marvels movie. She's in the Spidey and His Amazing Friends. She is a big character that people are going to be able to point to and say, oh yeah, I know Miss Marvel. I want to read that. I think this is just such a fantastic series to kind of get people to start, reading superhero books and look beyond. Next up, you got to have a copy of Batman Year One. This could be any number of different Batman stories, but I chose Year One because I think it shows how to sort of cut through the clutter of superhero comics. I think one of the most intimidating things when you're a new reader, and Omar, you have an entire series dedicated to sort of how to start reading because it is so complicated, is you go over, you say, I love Batman. I want to read Batman comics. And then you see an entire wall of Batman comics that just have different names and no one really knows what it is. Where do you start? You start with Year One. It is the perfect place to just pick up Batman and see, oh my gosh, this is why Batman is so cool. You're getting great Frank Miller art. You're getting great Frank Miller writing. And that matters because later there is both bad Frank Miller of both of those. And I think this is just such a great way for a kid who says, I love Batman. I wonder what the comics are about, to be able to say, oh, this is why Batman is cool. And last up, I'm doing the Crimson Cage. This is 100% a bunk pick. This is also a safety pick because I knew at least one other person was going to have Mouse on their list, which probably should have been the last one on here. But because I know at least someone else does and I get to vote for that, I'm doing my own pick. So this book, because I'm guessing most people here have not heard of this, this is a retelling of Shakespeare's Macbeth through 1980s indie wrestling. It is, but the thing is, it is an amazing retelling of that. And the reason that we're doing this, again, there's a bunk pick. I got to have a wrestling book on here. But one of the touchstone points of going to the library in high school is your teacher assigns you a prose book to read. You're looking for the easy way out. Are you looking for the movie? Are you looking for this? What kid isn't going to want to go to the library and have the librarian say, well, if you don't want to actually read Macbeth, what if you read Macbeth in comic book form with wrestling? And this book does a surprisingly great job of conveying the major themes and events of Macbeth while also being just this great horror wrestling book, and really kind of gets that vibe. And also, like, horror is a genre that's hard to do in a public library setting where everything is so sort of looked upon. This is a way we can sneak it in under the guise of classic literature. Guys, spoiler alert, this will not make the final cut, but I need for this to be in at least a library. So I will be buying at least a copy of this for all of my local libraries.
Well, dude, I've never heard of this book, and you sold me on it.
Yeah, I'm kind of excited. I'm definitely interested to talk more later.
Yeah. What an interesting.
I will be checking this out.
Okay. Everybody, that is Bunk Master B. Go and check out his channel as well if you enjoyed what he talked about. Next up is Larry.
Hey,
Just to clarify a question from the chat, we did not have the direction that we had to pick all ages books. Some people, as you will see, pick some books that are absolutely not all ages. That is not one of our criteria today. Each one of us decided on our own what went on the list and what the personal criteria was.
So yes, thank you for clarifying that. Take it away, Larry. What do you got here?
Okay. Now, unlike Bunk Master B, I sort of grew up with comics in the heyday of the spinner rack. The late 70s comics were still everywhere, so it wasn't hard to get into them. So, but I feel like that's completely different now. And a person may not be exposed to comics other than superhero movies and that sort of thing. So I also figured that I didn't really need to represent superheroes here because I think they are completely represented in the public eye now. So that's kind of the criteria I put on myself, goes beyond what the rules were here. Was I wanted it to be a one and done, and I want it to be accessible to a lot of people of different ages, but not necessarily all ages. I mean, certainly Blankets is not for really young people, but not little kids or anything, But so that's kind of what I put on myself here for my list. And Blankets is a lot of the more modern books that I've read, especially ones that are indie or indie-ish, were brought to me by Kristen. So kudos to her.
Okay.
Yeah. And like Blankets. But Blankets is a really emotional book. And I think Bunk described it really well. This book made me cry. And it's about relationships and first ones. And I read it much later in life. But I think if I had read this in high school, I think it would have helped me a lot. So I think it's an important book for that reason. Essex County is very similar to Blankets in that another book that made me cry. But yeah, I don't know how to really describe Essex County, but it's about family. It's about relationships. It has a little bit of genre elements, but it's more grounded in reality. Yeah, it's fantastic. And if someone hasn't experienced that, you got to do it. Just drop everything and read Essex County. So, yeah, Days of Sand is, I'm not going to attempt to pronounce the writer and author's name, but it is
it's Ame de Young.
Thank you. Okay, and this book I think is super important because it's real history. It's real American history. It's about the Dust Bowl, and I knew very little about this before I read it, about the subject. I mean, I knew it happened, but I didn't know exactly, the tragedies and the horror of the whole situation, and the way the U.S. government reacted to it was less than ideal, you might say. But so I think it's important from a historical standpoint, and it's just a really good read too. Fantastic art throughout, and so I think it could be certainly a learning moment for not just kids but adults about that period of history. Motor Girl. This is another gift from Kristen, but I was attracted to this because I like Terry Moore's art a lot. I hadn't read a lot of his stuff, and I really did not know what this book was about. And I almost hate to give it away here because it looks like it's about a anthropomorphic gorilla and a girl, right? But that's it's about so much more than that. It goes into flights of fancy with different genres. You have sci-fi elements and aliens, and all of these things happen. But then the giveaway, which I don't want to give too big of a spoiler, but this book is about the horrors of war and PTSD, and so it's super important for that reason, because that is probably still, I mean, it's gotten some exposure, but it's still not talked enough about, I don't think. And I think that could help someone that is suffering from that for sure. I mean, I don't have PTSD, so maybe I'm the wrong one to speak on it, but I think that could help someone. They called us enemy. This is George Takei. I don't know.
Takei.
I always have to look that up. Takei, thank you. Had it right the first time. But this is his story about his family being in the internment camps. And this is another historically accurate book that can expose this really dark part of American history that absolutely does not get talked about enough. And I mean, I knew a little bit about it, but I didn't know nearly as much as I should have. And this book enlightened me. But it's also hopeful, and it has a great message. And so I think that's super important. And this would be for, I think, really all ages. Well, I shouldn't say all. I would say teens and up for sure could enjoy this book. But that is that's my picks.
Definitely have a theme here, Larry.
Yeah.
Everybody that was Larry's library, the marble guy.
Yeah.
Love it, man. It's great. Look at those pigs. Let me see who is next. Nope. There we go. Oh, Peter, you're up.
I gotta recover because Larry made me really a little emotional there with some of that. Okay, here we go. The first pick on my list is called Olympians. It's by George O'Connor. And I remember growing up, I loved Greek mythology, even slightly before I got to comics. And I remember, there's a couple of those very specific Greek mythology books you see in a lot of people's bookshelves and in the libraries. There's that one, like, history of Greek mythology. And I'd never before read a comic that I really felt did it justice. Either it was more like an encyclopedia with pictures, or it dumbed it down so far that there was nothing really like controversial or bad seeming about the gods. And the whole point about them is they're not all good gods all the time. So Olympians is a series of books. It covers all the major parts of the pantheon. Each book is about 66 pages, so like 3 standard comic issues, and it focuses on 3 key adventures of the titular god. There's Aphrodite, there's a Poseidon book, there's Ares, there's Zeus, and even they are very kid appropriate. My kid has been reading them since she was 6 years old, but it does allude to the fact of some of the terrible things they do. We can think of some for Zeus, I'm sure. They are all brilliantly illustrated, all in a very consistent way by O'Connor, who's also the writer. And I just find myself going back to them so often. To me, they've become my Greek mythology library. And I really think it'd be so awesome for any library to just have them all on the shelf. They're in a really lovely series of hardcovers. I believe it is by First Second Books. So big fan of that series. And I think they're a brilliant choice in the library because they're fun for anybody to pick up, and they also like have a little bit of like learn about this Greek mythology as part of history, maybe even for class, who knows. My second book is a book that is so important in our household, which is Lumberjanes. Lumberjanes is about a camp out in the forest where it isn't just your typical summer camp. And it shows the adventures of this wonderful, wonderful group of lady and femme characters. It is a trans-inclusive feminist book. And I love it so much for that. It really is great because it shows these characters really like growing, and there's continuity between all the volumes, but each volume is a volume you can just pick up and love what the kids are doing in that one. And also I really love it because I didn't like it at first. I remember when I first read it to the kid, I was like, there's a lot of screaming and carrying on. I'm not really into it. And it really showed me that like sometimes not all comics have to be for you. This comic is not for me. It's for my kid. And it's how she learned to read. These kids were her friends that she talked about as imaginary friends when we were moving from New Zealand, or to New Zealand from the United States. And it continues to be a cherished part of our lives. My next book is March. It's actually a trilogy of books that are co-written by the person they are about. They are autobiographic comics by John Lewis, a titan of the American civil rights movement. And this kind of explores his youth all the way through the mid 60s. So it has all of his experiences with protest. It has the Rosa Parks story in it. It has Martin Luther King in it, and it has a lot of really scary negative things that happened, as we all know, during the civil rights movement as well. I was questioning if this is a kid's book or if it's appropriate for younger readers at all. And as I was building this list, I was debating with Kid Crisis what should go on, what should come off. And she picked it up and started reading it. She read all 3 of these in 24 hours. She said there's some of her favorite comics she's ever read. She's 10 years old. So I really think that it's an important message. I think it's a way to make somebody who seems like just a historical figure seem so alive and real to readers. And also the art is absolutely beautiful. My next one is Superman Smashes the Klan. I think this somewhere right around here too. I think this is just such a brilliant book. It is developed from originally a radio show of Superman, where the early Superman was largely known because he was a radio show character, and he really fought the Ku Klux Klan on the radio. And they adapted it pretty recently to comic books with beautiful art by Gurihiro. It's written by I always mess up as I'm saying his name, Gene Lun Yang, as who's a very, very famous for other books like American Born Chinese. And again, this really takes like a civil rights issue, but it also pairs it with a superhero, because superheroes are the original social justice warriors. And this is the perfect version of that. And it has these really wonderful kids that are really relatable to kids, no matter who you might be or what color or race or ethnicity you might be. And as they like learn to worship superhero and like Superman, and Superman comes to their defense just as people, as he would for anybody. Now, my last pick, I really wanted to pick a superhero book, and I wanted to pick a superhero book that had a nice hefty shelf that was totally accessible and anybody could pick up, because I thought a lot of you would pick manga, and I was like, well, I got to represent for superhero because I don't know manga as well. So I was like, X-Men, oh well, the epic line's not complete. I mean, Batman, what do you pick? And I was like, you know what has the perfect all-inclusive everything you need to understand are all in these books line? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. IDW's era of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, it's so brilliant. It's heavy. It makes these characters into more than just cartoon characters, and then the world just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. And these complete collections, which are currently being reissued in paperback, actually are in perfect reading order as curated by IDW. All of the side miniseries are there. Everything you need is in this group of books. So you could just have one bookshelf of all of them. They're sequentially collecting everything all the way up to the relaunch of the series, which I believe starts this week by
and
Jason
also
Aaron
on
and
Humble
Joel
Bundle
Jones.
right now. Just remind chat who does
Hey, get on Humble Bundle.
Go to your local library, because a lot of them will have it, but it's there.
James, throw up the link.
Y'all, you can get so lost in this. We're talking 100+ issues of just peak comics. And you know what? The Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles are superheroes, and this is a peak superhero comic. So that is my list for the libraries today.
Well, in some countries, they are Teenage Mutant Hero Turtles.
Oh, I did not know that.
Sense. I'm just going to say, oh my God, this stream is going to be difficult. Like, all these choices are so good. And I'm going to feel so guilty for saying no. How do you even do this?
Superman smashes a clan shop and March. I was like, well, I don't.
Oh, okay. Really quick. I got a couple of super chats. Happy Father's Day, everyone. These are going to help me buy the books. Thank you so much for super chatting. Yes, happy Father's Day, everyone. Thank you so much, Jack Berry. And thank you, James. Everyone knows all of Omar picks will be wrong. Peter M. calling it in March of 2024, picking a fight months before we even started doing this. Wow. All right. Dang. Okay. I think Kristen is next. I believe. I was right. And it is Kristen with an A, correct, Kristen?
Oh, I'm so sorry.
I forgive you, Peter. It's okay.
That's on me. I probably missed it.
Well, I forgive you too.
Thank you.
Of course, Bone was already picked by Bunk, and he, described this book very well. It should be in every library. I believe Curtis beforehand, you were like, it's in every library. Unfortunately, I've ran into a library that doesn't have it. So
Same.
It needs to be in every library. And Omar, I believe you said you would do the all-in-one. I would definitely do the singles, like the little trade paperback singles, just because that's better than this hefty thing for little hands, because it is a great all-ages book. It's fun adventure. The cartooning is just incredible. And, it's something that I would have eventually picked up probably without a library, but I picked up at my library first. So I definitely had to include it here. Lumberjanes is also near and dear to my heart for different reasons. Again, Peter described this wonderfully. I don't have to go into it again, but it is such a joy of a comic. I think every single library needs to have it. It is a great read for kids of all ages. And I love the inclusivity. There's so much great reputation throughout this. And I love all the cartooning and the stories. And it's just such a blast. And it needs to be in every library, 100%.
I'm gonna do a quick little reload on your name here. So just give me 1 second, Kristen.
It's not.
Yeah, that A is my fault, by the way. So
yeah, you can blame him. Really,
Larry.
I wanted a more unique spelling, and so
Thanks, Larry.
My first pick was worse. It was going to look like Romulan. It was going to be with 2 Y's. And my wife vetoed that. She was like, "No, come on."
I'm glad it wasn't. Would make my life harder.
Jeff Lemire. I see some Jeff Lemire love in there. But tell me more about On a Sun. Oh, I'm sorry. You were talking about Lumberjanes.
Yeah, but On a Sunbeam. Yeah. Tilly Walden is one of my all-time favorite cartoonists. You could hopefully find On a Sunbeam in the young adult section of libraries. That's where I've seen it. But it's not always there. And I think now more than ever, Happy Pride Month, we need to have great LGBT stories in graphic novel form for people to access. And this is a wonderful one. There's sci-fi. There's, again, tons of great representation. And I adore it. I think everybody needs to read it. And again, I read it first at the library. I think actually all of these I read first at the library. So
I love hearing that. That's
wonderful. I had a special connection to all of these as well, including Ghost World, which I know may be a weird pick, but it is about these 2 teenagers, if you don't know, who just hate everything, really. It's such a different read. I remember when I picked it up, from the cover alone, I didn't know anything about it. And this is certainly not something I would have found in my dad's library growing up. In fact, he's never read a Daniel Klaus book. So this was a whole new journey at a library for me to just pick something up that's totally different than what I would normally read. He would have also hated the color palette because he's a big color guy. And there's not color here. So, and this was relatable to me as a teenager who also hated a lot of things and thought things sucked. So I had a blast checking this out. It was very different than what I had normally read, especially at the time. And I think it's a good introduction for people just wanting to see something very different who may not know comics like these exist. And that's my favorite thing to do at the library too, is just pick something up by the cover and see how I feel about it. So I think this is a great pick. I also had to read this for my college graphic novels class. And I was the only one who liked it, by the way. So I get it. It's polarizing.
I am so jealous of people that had college graphic novel classes.
It only lasted a semester. People didn't sign up.
That's sad.
It is sad.
There's also a movie about Ghost World with
that's right.
Scarlett Johansson and who's the other lady in that?
I can't remember her name either.
Thora Birch.
Yeah.
Thora Birch. Yeah.
Thank you.
And of course, I had to pick Essex County.
Of course, yes.
Of course.
Look at you holding that limited edition. Oh,
I mean, I got it when it went up. I was waiting for it. This is the first black and white comic I read. Again, my dad did not have any black and white comics until I made him read some.
Larry, what's going on, buddy? Blankets on the list, huh? Okay.
I actually got into Essex County because of Sarah Quinn from Tina Terror, one of my favorite bands of all time. She championed it on Canadian Reads. Curtis, you may know about that, I would assume.
Canadian Reads, Curtis.
Yep.
Where they battle books every year to pick like a top Canadian book. Essex County was out immediately because it was a graphic novel. It was a bummer to watch, but I have to read this. So I found it at the library. I read it. It's become
Kristen, I've got your first copy of it though. So you wouldn't have had your nice one if I hadn't.
No, I would still have it. I would just have both.
You would? Okay.
I believe Kristen when she loves this book.
Yeah, I do have an Essex County tattoo. So like I just could not pick that, you know.
Have you seen the TV show?
I haven't because I'm not Canadian.
There's a TV show.
There is, yeah. The Canadian, the CBC, the Canadian Broadcasting Company, made a TV show adaptation. It's pretty good. It's not. It goes into some different directions, but it's not bad.
Is it live action or is it animation?
Yes, live action. live
Oh,
action.
that's cool.
I guess I
love
need to
that.
get a
I'm gonna have to
VPN or
pirate it.
something.
Well,
I'm gonna have to
Yeah,
pirate it.
we'll
Very
have to VPN it.
We're
Just say
donating books to the
VPN, Matt.
library.
What do you do?
Okay. Good picks, Kristen.
Thank you.
One of those made it on my top 10. So I two of those, Kristen. So those will definitely get yeses from me. Oh, this is gonna be hard. Curtis is up. Thank you, Curtis.
So I've got, so those who know me know that I love old comics, and I'm not talking like the original Marvel 1960s comics. I mean going back to like World War II and that kind of stuff, because there's such comics has such a long history going back over 120 years. And so I think one of the most important parts of libraries is education. And I really think that there should be a lot of comics that help people understand not just the history and that kind of thing. Like I love the choices like They Called Us Enemy, but also the history of comics, which help us understand where humans were at certain points in history as well. So Terry and the Pirates is a newspaper comic strip from the 1930s and 40s. It's an adventure comic strip by Milton Caniff, and it's one of the greatest adventure comics of all time. And it is heavily influential to everybody who has done adventure comics since the 1930s and 1940s, including Frank Miller and like Batman Year One, heavily influenced by this, and also in movies. The way that storyboarding in movies works now is a result of Milton Caniff's storytelling in Terry and the Pirates. So I picked this because it is just a fantastic comic strip. And also, I need to show you this book because it's huge. It's a really, really big book. It's a series of 12, and these books are $100 each. And because they're $100 each, they're not accessible to a lot of people. And one of the points of libraries is to be accessible. And so to have libraries have a series of $100 books that anybody can go and borrow is essential. I think very, very important. So I encourage anybody to pick up these. There's other editions of Terry and the Pirates where they are smaller, not in print anymore, but libraries could easily shelve these a lot easier. But again, important for libraries to carry stuff like this.
Curtis, really quick, did you miss the part where I said I would be paying out of my pocket for these books to donate to a library?
Well, you know what? I worked for the publisher, so maybe if Terry and the Pirates makes the top cut, I work for the publisher that produces these, and so I can see about getting a copy donated for you.
Oh, you're so sweet. I was just kidding. I would
Okay.
be happy to pay for them. Woo! Okay, moving on. Curtis.
Number 2, speaking of education, is Understanding Comics. This is a graphic novel. It's not a prose book about comics, but it is a comic about comics. And Scott McCloud has done so much research into the history of comics, their origins, and not just that, but how to read them and why they are to be read in certain ways, and the graphic language that is used. Is like anything that you want to know about why comics are comics. And stuff that you don't even realize when you're reading comics. Like this is the book to get, and every library should have this, because even if you love comics and have loved them all your life, you read through this and you realize, wow, comics actually, I understand why and how I'm reading comics more because I've read this book. So I really think that it should be in every library. Number 3, I can't believe that no one has picked any manga yet, and so I'm putting Lone Wolf and Cub, which is one of my favorite comic series of all times. It is a series of like 28 volumes, and it's all about a Ronin type of character, a wandering assassin who has a baby, he's about 2 years old, and he has no master, and so he just kind of wanders and does odd jobs and stands up for people, and it's just an incredible book. And the artwork is absolutely incredible, The storytelling is phenomenal, and the best thing about this series is you can just pick up one volume; it doesn't matter which, and enjoy it. And one of the things one of the problems I do have with libraries is that if a library has, it buys a series of 28 books, then they all get loaned out, and you can't really necessarily get them all in order. You have to wait for them to be returned, or they get lost and not replaced or whatever. But so for Lone Wolf and Cub, even if number 3 gets lost or never returned or gets sent to a different library, then it's okay. You can still read any of the books and it's just fine. Influential. I think it's an influential manga. Not for kids though. It should definitely be in the adult section. But on the flip side of that, the Carl Barks library is essential reading. And I was like, I got to put something Uncle Scrooge on here. But do I do the Life and Times, or do I go with the classic Carl Barks stuff? And Life and Times is absolutely essential and should be in libraries. But there would be no Life and Times if we didn't go back to the original Carl Barks first. Carl Barks is a master storyteller who is so good at adventure storytelling and comedy and everything in between. He has the perfect blend of essential storytelling, and he did this with Donald Duck for all characters. It turned Donald Duck from just a kind of a one-dimensional angry cartoon character into a full-fledged kind of a humanoid character who goes on worldwide adventures. And then eventually he introduced Uncle Scrooge, and that's where it really took off. So the Uncle Scrooge volumes of the Carl Barks library, I think, really should be in libraries. Again, you can pick up any volume. You don't have to go in order. And kids and adults both enjoy those completely. They're really great. My last pick is For Better or For Worse. And for those of you who know me, this is a series that's near and dear to my heart because I've been the editor of this series for a number of years. We just we're wrapping up the last volume in November. And it's just an incredible comic strip, a family comic strip about just an average middle-class North American family, the mom and dad who are raising their small children and going through the struggles of life. And what makes this comic strip unique is that the characters age in real time. And so a newspaper comic strip, you get one 3-panel comic strip story every day in the newspaper, and over time it creates a larger story. And so Lynn Johnston, the author and cartoonist of this strip, crafted a story that went on for 30 years where the characters age in real time. The 2 kids in this story are about 4 and 2 when it starts, and at the very end, the oldest one has graduated or has a family of his own with his own young kids and stuff. It's fantastic. The volume in particular that I would really love to see in every library is volume 4. This is the cover. And it covers the years 1990 to 1993. And in this cover, it features a character named Lawrence who comes out of the closet to his parents. And it was one of the very, very first comics to feature a story about a gay person, an LGBTQ story, and it's really, really quite influential. It still holds up today, and it opened up the gates for people to write more stories like that. So it has some good representation. Some people comments are saying reprint of volume 3. Yeah, sorry, volume 3 is out of print now. But anyway, those are my 5 picks. Pretty different from everybody else's, not graphic novels, but more series, but from a variety of different genres and ages.
Wow. Okay, those are great picks. One of them, I did make the conscious decision that even if Understanding Comics doesn't make it to our top 10, I'm still going to donate it because I think it is the most important book to donate to a public library, because a lot of people don't realize how not everybody gets comics. Not everybody can follow comics. People have a hard time, and then this will just elevate your just understanding of comics, hence the title. Next up is Wonder Maddie.
It's
Take it away,
me.
Wonder Maddie.
Hi.
You talk about
I tried to like look through it. I had a list of like 10 and I narrowed it down mostly because I misread what you said and I put together 10. And Kristen said, you only have to do 5. Calm down. I was like, you're right. And so I tried to find kind of a diverse selection of books, some that were all ages and some that were younger, and one in particular that is very much for adults. But first is Sheets. Sheets is one I think anybody can pick up. It's definitely all ages, but a lot of my friends have read this that are older have really enjoyed it as well, because it really is a story about grief and how do you deal with that. It's about this young girl who befriends ghosts and ends up washing their sheets, because the ghosts are in sheets, in her laundromat, and becomes friends with them. And this is a series. There's 3. It's a trilogy. It's done. I tried to pick things that are short or like all in ones. And this it's fun, but it's also devastating. And it's one of those, I like comics a lot because they're a way to make hard things in life accessible, and things that it makes it easier to deal with just some of the tougher things in life, especially things like death. And it's also really special to me because in the second book, they introduce a character who is autistic. Not that it's explicitly said, but it's pretty obvious. She's autistic and she's a photographer, and her way of just navigating the world and the difficulty she has of navigating the world, understanding other people, is written so well. And I think that's so important for people to see, not only if it's in themselves, if they have that, but also in others, so they know how to be more open-minded. Second, Oh Human Star is incredible. This is by Blue Delaquante. You can actually read all this online for free, I believe. Kristen, not if I'm correct. Yeah, okay. Kristen and I read this together, and I fell in love. This is a futuristic sci-fi story, which at its heart is a story about transness. First told it by viewing this girl who is a robot but looks like a human, and her trying to figure out what that means to her. But also about one of the main characters. I won't give it away, but it shows it in such an interesting way and not a familiar way. When we see a lot of trans stories, they tend to be like young adult graphic novels. And this is like you can be a young adult and read this, but it's told, the characters through which that you see are trans or like experience that are not the typical ones that you would see. And the art's fantastic. I'm in Blue Delaquante's one that I don't think a lot of people read their books. I think they're a little bit more niche. But every time they come up with a new book, I'm continually blown away by the stories they put together, especially in this like sci-fi landscape they tend to put their books within. So there's other like, it's another version of that, dealing with certain topics in a way that is fantastical, right? So you don't actually know you're thinking about these things. On a Sunbeam, I'm so glad Kristen chose it as well. On a Sunbeam is fantastic. It's a sci-fi epic, romance epic with incredibly unique art. Tilly Walden really is such an interesting artist, and the colors that she uses are so interesting. And it's another queer story that's not about being queer. It just is. And it's at its heart just a really unique story about traveling through the space to find the one you love, and what does that mean, and what is separation. And I have some art from Tilly in my office because it's so beautiful. And it was hard because there's a lot of Tilly Walden books to choose, but I decided to kind of focus on this one to show just what comics can be. Because my list is really, what can comics be? Because there's a lot of ones that you see and you're like, okay, this what makes sense about comics. But there's people who don't want to read comics. They think it's just superheroes. I think it's just jokes, right? Or they think it's for kids. And so I think it's really important to have books that push that envelope. Which brings me to Upgrade Soul, which I cannot tell you anything about. So that makes it difficult to talk about this, but it's my favorite comic.
Sold it to me.
Well, that's how Kristen sold it.
We did an old reader, new reader, and it became one of my favorite books that year. It was amazing.
That's how Kristen sold it to me. She said, read this, don't look up anything about it. I'm telling you all the same thing. Please read this, don't look up anything about it. But I will say that if any book really pushes what people expect comic books to be, it's Upgrade Soul. It is so incredibly well written. It is so thought-provoking. It's a book that you're going to read and you're going to sit on for a while afterwards. And you're just slowly appreciate it more and more. And Ezra Clayton Daniels is fantastic. I constantly tweet this man about how much I love this book. And I push it to everybody I possibly can. And I feel like if you're looking to surprise an adult in a library, it's Upgrade Soul. And fifth, Monstrous. So I try to keep shorter books or like more self-contained, but Monstrous for me is so necessary because there's so much fantasy that you have access to in libraries. There's so many great fantasy stories, but not necessarily fantasy in comic books as shown in more of an East Asian lens. I think Marjorie Liu and Sana Takeda do a great job with this, where she sees wonderful, fantastical environments and abilities in these characters that aren't set in traditional fantasy sense. And you don't get a lot of that. And I think it can really show you what fantasy and comics can be as well. So those are my picks.
Thank you, Maddie. And yeah, Upgrade Soul is amazing. Seriously.
So good. Everybody read it, please. Just read it. Just read it once. Don't look up anything. I swear to God. Don't look up anything about it.
All right. Let's see. There we go. All right, for the love of comics, take us away.
All right. I just want to get a quick clarification, Omar. You've picked 11 books for a library, and the 7 of us have to pick 10 amongst us? Is that have I got those numbers correct? I'm just checking.
Yeah, you mean the perks of owning the channel?
Right.
I mean, sure. We'll see what happens. We'll see what happens.
Okay. Okay.
There are a lot
I wanted to make sure that I have those numbers right, because obviously, as I was saying, this is a ridiculous thing to, but I think this is a fantastic. I mean, I've been looking through everyone's choices. And I don't know how we're going to make any selections.
I don't either, man.
I mean, so
usually we
it's
make
like, but you're the one who came up with this. This is a good idea, sure. But I did want to say that I love libraries. It's just they're some of the best places in the world, and I think particularly today, a library is just more than a place for books, as a community space and as a just as an environment. It's so important. And for me, libraries have been very important all through my life, and including with comics, because when I was young, we used to get cheap comics, and there was the rough newsprint, very easily fall apart. But the first time I ever saw European comics, Tintin and Asterix comics, were because my mother borrowed them from the library, and they were like these deluxe things, and I had no idea comics could be like that. All the way to my current collection, or like whatever's on my shelves, about like a quarter of them are ex-library books, because libraries keep getting rid of books, and you can pick them up cheap in the glorious United States and places like that. So I've been able to pick up a lot of books that are ex-library, but that also made me think about this interesting thing, is that libraries are actually getting rid of books all the time. I've always thought about libraries in which you just keep stuffing books, and every book goes into a library, but they're always cycling through books. So I think one of the toughest things was, do you pick something that is rare and niche and no one has ever heard of, because that's what a library is supposed to have? Or is the library supposed to provide a service to give people what they're looking for, and have the most popular, have the most, just the ones that they can't buy themselves, but they want to read Saga, they want to read Dogman. So library should have Dogman, because that's going to get checked out more. And the ones that don't get checked out get sold to people like me. So it's a tough thing to think of. But I did want to say, and for those who are not familiar, I think if there are any people who know my channel, they know I can't just start talking about these comics. I've got to first have caveats and disclaimers and give a little bit of context, etc. But in the interests of sanity, because this was such a tough situation, I was trying to think about this library. And I cheated, because I just said this library already has some books. So I had a list of 10 books that I said the library already has Mouse Persepolis, Watchman Bone, Nausicaa, Jimmy Corrigan. It has Uncle Scrooge. It has Tezuka's Phoenix. It has Blankets, and it has Joe Sacco's Footnotes and Guns.
So if your library has Tezuka's Phoenix,
that's why, because where else are you going to find it? So that's why
my library does. That's how I read it.
Well, see, I've never found a library like that. but that's what the library already has. And so when I watched your video, Omar, I was glad to see that, you know, Understanding Comics included, you had a lot of the books that my library already has. So these are the books that I bring to the library once it already has all of those, because I'm just assuming, that's just my assumption. So the books that I have over here are just, it's the same logic as everyone else has been talking. I try to be as widespread as possible and try to hit as many different things. I mean, I could just make a list of autobiography, in which case you would have Fun Home and They Called Us Enemy, and all of those things would just keep coming. I mean, yeah, you could really just do autobiography in comics. So the idea is I picked one autobiography, one superhero comic, etc. You know, I was trying to get one of each, and in some ways they sort of mirror for me those top 10, or you know, that all libraries have. So Paracueos for me is a comic that I don't think many people have heard of and read in the United States and in Asia. I think it's quite famous in Europe, but it was introduced to me by a friend of my channel who sent it to me, actually, and it is an award-winning book about growing up in these state-run homes after the Second World War in Franco, Spain. And it's phenomenal, and it's from the 1970s, so 6 months after Franco died, this comic started being published, and it's really a very unique mixture of cartooning and gritty, real, horrible stuff. It's done as a series of standalone, you know, almost like gag pages, except that there's nothing funny in them. It's all very sad, but they're just 1 or 2 page stories, and they were serialized in that way. And it's fantastic. And I think where comics like Mouse and Palestine have deservedly gotten the reputation that they have, a book like this, which is in many ways an equivalent sort of testimonial as those books are, and many other comics like that are. So simply from the fact that more people should read it, it won every award there is in Europe when it came out. But today it isn't sort of named in the same way that those others are. So just as an attempt to sort of balance the scales a little bit, or to put more really sad books that'll make you very unhappy about human beings out there, I would have that on the list for that reason. And as for the other 4, I don't know. I mean, for this panel and this audience, I don't think I need to say anything. They just they need to be.
We have had some people in the chat who have never heard of the Eternaut, so I think you might need to give a little bit of a pitch on that one for sure.
Right. So, well, this is, yeah, I guess you could consider this sliding as far as popularity is concerned. Although I've seen that Usagi Yojimbo has really become popular in the last 5 years or so, I think, because of the reprints and because of IDW and Dark Horse really putting their backs into it. But I mean, even 5-6 years ago, when I started coming on YouTube, most people were not talking about Usagi Yojimbo. But the Eternaut is an Argentinian comic written by Hector Jaman Osterheld and drawn by Francisco Soles Lopano, I think. And it's, again, it's a science fiction story about, well, it's a science fiction story, but it's really an allegory. But the political allegory within it isn't heavy-handed at all. It's really a very tense science fiction story. But what I think is fantastic about it is the allegory underneath it becomes obvious even if you have no political context of what was going on in Argentina. And it's about authoritarian power, and it's about the way that people are controlled or can let themselves be controlled and resist. So I think, you know, as far as those themes are concerned, it's fantastic. But it's an action-packed, tense thriller. It's constantly keeping you in suspense. And even though the Eternaut, the person who travels through time, etc., from the beginning is sort of an image of this book, it's not really about a solitary figure. For most of it is about a group of people trying to do things together, which is very much in keeping with the zombie apocalypse and those kind of stories. But it's that idea of people coming together in order to survive and in order to triumph that I think the undercurrent of that is what elevates this, which is also considered a masterpiece of comics. But again, if people are not aware of it, or if Fantagraphics only prints it once every 7 years, it would be good to be able to find it in a library. And Astro City, because I do love superhero comics. But picking one superhero comic from the ocean of superhero comics to have in a library, I just assume that they'd all be there. Instead of, because I would obviously lean towards those standalone superhero comics reads that I do, not the long in continuity series. But to me, Astro City is, first of all, it's one of the most perfect superhero comics ever made. But it is a long-running series that has incredible consistency and integrity, primarily because it's the same creators who've been working on it over the years. But there are consequences, and things happen that matter. And it's the kind of critique that people have of long-running superhero stories don't sort of apply over here, where the world does change. The world has significant historical milestones in it, and they become part of that history, and people accept it. It's not all retconned. At the same time, it has possibly the single best retcon crisis story ever in the single issue, The Nearness of You. So as standalone one-shots or as long arcs, Astro City excels at all levels and is one of the most entertaining sort of dissections or postmodern, whatever they call them. It's not boring. It's not an intellectual exercise. It's extremely emotional. It's extremely exciting, but it's also very, very brainy. So definitely my favorite superhero comic, but also it's easy to pick up and they're hard to find. So again, a library, I would like to have that entire series in there. And that's why I have Usagi Yojimbo and Lone Wolf and Cub in there. Not only are they excellent series, they sort of represent to me pinnacle of comics storytelling and consistency, but they're also huge long series with lots of stories in them that are all consistent. I mean, there are lots of long running series like Hellboy, for example. The peaks of Hellboy I love, but it has a lot of parts that I don't love as much, whereas with both Usagi Yojimbo and Lone Wolf and Cub, it's pretty much all killer, no filler. I mean, the lowest points would be high points for any other comics. So having those entire long stories available to people, and it's the same kind of things that were said before. You can pick them up from wherever. You can read stories in the middle. You don't have to start at the beginning. Yeah, so those are my picks after those other 11 picks.
I hate you so much, Peter. You put me last after For the Love of Comics, and that's gonna be tough.
It's tradition that you go last.
Oh my god. Really quick, somebody brought it up in the chat, and I feel like it is really important to like talk about how important comics are. I think it was James that brought it up. I just want to make sure I give credit. Yes, the author of Eternaut was disappeared by the Argentinian government. Yeah, in 1977. In 1977, Hector was gone, and a lot of people, including his family, blamed the Argentinian government because of the things he was writing and stuff. So people die for these things. It's crazy. That is a really powerful book. I love that book. And I think Fantagraphics, since I did a video on it about 6 years ago, they reprinted it since, but it's currently out of print. It's a beautiful.
Is that a single volume book?
Yes, it is. It's got an awesome like slipcase edition too, like a die cut, like the American version does. He also did another was it Mort Cinder? I think that was the other book that he did.
Yeah, and which is also really, really great.
Yeah, that one's good too. His family was kidnapped first. I think some of his family. It's dark, man. Like because when I read, I didn't even know about that until I did a video on it, and then one of my viewers was like, "Oh man, it's such a horror." Like he was from Argentina, and he was telling me like here, and he sent me some links, and I was like, "Whoa." All right, I'm last. Oh, here we go. Man, these look basic compared to like all your other choices we have on the list.
Oh wow, Watchmen, watch out!
I feel okay. So here we go. Watchmen, absolutely, yeah. It's a book that everybody recommends, and there's a reason for that. It is real. It's gritty. Definitely not for kids, even though I read it when I was way too young. I was 12 years old reading Watchmen, but there are things in there that, if you don't like real violence in comics, it's definitely not for you. But these things really happen. And there's a reason why people are addicted to these true crime stories. There's a reason why there's 7 freaking spin-offs of Law and Order. These things happen, and comics are also a medium to get into them. And I think it's a wonderful thing that Alan Moore created. Like, yeah, it's a love letter to the golden age. Then he brings a lot of like broken humans into the modern age. And I don't know, it's just studying the early days of the superhero myth and throwing in like all these human aspects to these broken characters. There's not a good person in here. I mean, at most you could say some of them are just gray, and unfortunately real life is like that. Marvels, I feel like that is the perfect book that somebody could see on the shelf, because I went with what Kristen said about picking a book because of the cover. A lot of kids did that. Like my wife was just commenting that she does too. And Marvels has that beautiful painted look to superheroes that I think delivers internally, right? Whereas Astro City's wonderful, but the internal artwork doesn't look like the covers do. So it's almost like a false advertisement for a kid that picks up the book. It's like, wait a second, that's not Alex Ross. Whereas this does, though. And it's also a really cool introduction to the different eras of superheroes. So if somebody liked the Spider-Man movies or the X-Men movies, it's a really cool way to do it, because it goes through the different eras of the Marvel universe, all told through the perspective of one guy. And then he's getting older, and all these superheroes are coming into the Silver Age. It's amazing. Mouse, I mean, for the love of comics said, there's a reason why this one is at most libraries. I didn't see it in the Midway library, which I frequent, which is a very small library. And it's also like when I did my video, like, I can't believe it's the most controversial comic to put on a list. Like, it's crazy. Like, at one time I mentioned, like 2 years ago, you couldn't even talk about Mouse on YouTube. You would get demonetized or your video would get pulled. It was that controversial, which is ridiculous. But it is a masterpiece and autobiographical, of course. I am really surprised Maddie nor Kristen did not put any manga on the list. Just me and Curtis.
Well, okay.
And it was tough.
That's a commitment. You know what I mean? Because I feel like if you put up, there's not a lot of shorter manga series. I mean, yeah, there's Nausicaa, but like there's not a lot of shorter ones. I was like, well, if I say that, then the poor libraries have to buy like 1 million volumes. You know?
There isn't.
There's really not a lot. I was like Junji Ito, but I was like, it's hard to pick one, because I was like, okay, what do you go with? One Piece.
I'll
wait till you do an Evergreen manga show, and we'll talk about manga then.
But I went with Akira. Akira, for anybody that grew up in the 80s and 90s, that was the one movie that they would show everywhere. It's only 6 volumes, and really, I mean, it's unlike Lone Wolf and Cub, this one is a continuing series, but that's okay to get people hooked on something and have a volume 1 there. But I think the artwork is amazing, the story is great, and yeah, I would love to see that. I've seen it in a couple of libraries, definitely not my school library when I was going to school there. And Calvin and Hobbes, because I wanted something lighthearted. I wanted something easy for kids to get into and read. That one is definitely for all ages, and it's just beautiful. You could pick it up and drop it at any time. You don't have it. I mean, it's not like one long continuing story, but it does keep your interest. And it also, what it does is it teaches you how to read the panels and follow sequential art. And I think it does it in an amazing way with the 3-panel grid. But those are my choices, and I'm just going to say this is going to be difficult. I don't know how we're going to condense this to 10 books, but we're going to try our damnedest. Okay, Peter, how are we going to do this?
Oh boy, so I think we're going to go back to the top, starting with Bunk Master, and what we're going to do is those of us who know these books are going to, if we want to do a co-pitch for something that somebody else nominated, we certainly can. And for those of us who don't know the books at all and are like, well, I'm kind of missing some information about it, or I'm kind of on the fence, should I check it out of the library? We can ask the person who nominated to give us a little bit more information.
Okay, let me share the screen again.
Now, a quick question. Can we just vote universally yes and just vote all of these go in? Because there's not a single no, really, I've heard on all. Like, everything I'm like, yeah, no, yeah, no, uh-huh.
Like, well, this is the power of bringing stuff that people just love. Like, you can just hear the really the emotion in everybody's voices. They've been talking about this is getting me choked up. Maybe it's just too early in the morning for me to be allowed to be on YouTube. But just the absolute power with which everybody spoke about these books has me really emotional as a fellow comic book fan.
And it's also difficult because the one thing, if you're new to our panels, that goes like, that makes it hard is that I had no idea what anybody else chose. I sent that list right to Peter. Like, so it wasn't like, oh, cool, Bunk chose blankets, I don't have to. Or somebody chose Fun Home, which did not make on anybody's list, right?
I was sweating about the lack of mouths until you went, Omar, because I specifically called out a Crimson Gauge. I'm
Right,
like, this is supposed to be mouths, and then I was like, uh-oh.
I thought there were
nobody choose mouths.
Come here with mouse. I thought I was going to see more Batman Year One. I thought I was going to see more Watchmen. Larry really surprised me with his picks, which is great, by the way. So I think that's what makes it a little harder coming in here. We've had Evergreen streams where I think just about everybody chose the same books, and we only had like 15 to choose from, where it should have been like 35. So this is going to be really, really difficult because I think there's just a couple of repeats. Thank you so much, Neil. Omar's playing checkers while the rest of the panel's playing chess. Just kidding. Thank you. Thank you for the super chat. That will help buy the $100 out of print book that Curtis suggested. I appreciate that. Okay. So, Peter, you're still frozen, but that's okay. Can you still hear us? And
I hear all you guys fine. Maybe I need to jump out and jump back in.
Maybe. But so, what do you want to do now? Then do we go through? Does Ben go one last pitch?
Well, does anybody else on the panel want to say like, oh yeah, I almost picked that one, or does anyone else in the panel be like, I don't know if I would reserve that, Ben. I need you to sell me a little bit. And I'm going to reload while you get
Bone made my top 10.
3 of these books are in my top 10. Bone, Miss Marvel, and Batman Year One. So that's...
Bone is already in the library that I was giving books to. So.
Yeah, and me too.
Even in like very, very small libraries, I've seen Bone. And blankets, but I think those are definitely... Blankets and Bone and Miss Marvel, to me, seem like very required picks. I'm less likely on Batman Year One, but that's just not my style of Batman. So that's just me speaking for me.
So the reason I chose Year One, like, because again, I want something that's going to be easy for someone to pick up and go for. And honestly, something like Hush, I was thinking about because you get all of the different rogues gallery, you get Jim Lee art. It's like one of the easiest to be like, I don't know anything about Batman, and be like, wow, Batman is the coolest. But how are you going to direct a reader? Like, if someone's going to a shelf of Batman, like it's tough to like narrow them in on like, yes, that's the one to pick if they don't know that beforehand. Whereas like on a shelf, if I don't know where I'm going, if I see the word Year One on that, like I think that's a great starting place. And I mean, that's where the modern Batman came from. So like, I think that's one of just the easiest recommends personally.
I completely agree. I think it is the template for every origin story. It is easy to follow and easy to read. To some people, it is the greatest Batman comic. But this isn't about what's the best, right? It's about how to get people to read comics that a library has, right? Like, if you're interested in Batman, I think that is the Batman comic to have. If you're going to represent superheroes, that's I think that is definitely one of them, if not the one.
I still feel like we don't really need to worry about superhero representation at this point. You know,
Well, I mean, when kids think of comics, though, like that's where their brain goes. Okay, and this is just like some of my picks, like Miss Marvel, I picked because unfairly, I do volunteer at my daughter's schools where there's the Scholastic Fair, and that book is the #1 book that gets picked up. Like, and kids are buying it, the digest size book, not the omnibus or the trades, and I love that. So, and it was the first book that my daughter read cover to cover, and I kind of did the same thing like when I chose it in my top 10 because I thought, okay, well, it's not about me. It's about what kids are checking out. I was interviewed. This is adorable. The best interview I've had this year. I was interviewed by a 4th grade and a 5th grade class in New York. And it was amazing. And I'm like, how many of you kids like Spider-Man? And they were raising their hands, right? And I asked, okay, how many of you kids like Peter Parker more than Miles Morales? And this is in New York. And like 2 of those kids raised their hand. Everybody else was about Miles Morales. And I was like, that is so cool and so different than when I was a kid. Like, so kids are interested in superheroes, right? They see it in the big screen. They see the colors. They see the Into the Spider-Verse movies. So I don't think there's anything wrong with like having superhero books as part of this.
I think a lot of them are read, like you said, the digest or the YA graphic novels that DC and Marvel are putting out. Those are like the really accessible ones.
Mm-hmm.
I would also argue that, like, of course, librarians are putting superhero comics into libraries more than these other outliers.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that what we need to do here is what are the books that we are trying to champion for to be in libraries, and I don't think any superhero books needs to be championed. Neither does Bone. It doesn't need to be championed by us.
Okay, I'll give you Bone, but Miss Marvel, I don't see
Miss Marvel, I think
any library. Batman Year One.
No, it's definite. Miss Marvel has definitely got a place in the libraries in my area.
Same.
That's wonderful. I love that.
Yeah.
But are we saying, I'm just curious, are we saying that what we think every library should have is different from, I mean, is it different from championing? If we say, well, every library should have Understanding Comics and there's no reason to champion it, I mean, we could probably throw out more than half of people's suggestions just because they are, I mean, pretty big and famous for a reason.
And maybe that's how we pare down the list.
So we only go for things libraries don't already have?
I don't know.
That would have been
my
a
suggestion.
choice selection.
I see the knives. It's like this is more of an assassin game than a boxing match compared to our normal version of the Evergreen stream.
I will say then that changes the game, right?
Absolutely.
The idea behind this was to give like what we would like to see, curate a list of what 10 books should be in a library, whether it's your local.
Literally, the name of the stream is the 10 graphic novels every public library should have.
Despite of how popular
if we're saying
it is, or
not parentheses that they don't already have, because that's a very different stream at that point.
Okay, so I have a non-philosophical.
Marvel makes sense. All right, go ahead, Peter.
I have a non-philosophical question about this. So blankets, it's one of the books in this poll that I've never read and I don't know anything about. To quote Princess Bride, is this a kissing book? Like, is it only about kissing? Because then I'm probably not as interested.
No, it's a love story.
As the grandpa said, shut up and learn something.
There's a lot of religious talk as well.
Yeah.
It's an identity book. It's about growing up and moving from the person that sort of everybody else told you that you should be to the person that you choose to be. And it's about the different avenues that you go through and do that with kissing, with religion, with family. There's so many different things where it's like, this is where everybody tells me I should be, but this is where I think I should be as I start to have my own identity.
I will say it's a book that I feel like a lot of men identify with too, because I feel like it shows your male protagonist being emotional and vulnerable in a way that a lot of men feel more open to reading. You know what I mean? Like it helps. I think it's helped a lot of people connect that way. Maybe I'm not a man, but that's my experience. People
pitch it as like I pitch it as that summer love story, like that most people have had, right? Like, and once it goes away, it goes away. But there is a couple of other things in the book that I never spoil because I want people to be surprised, because it is a love story, but it's not a love story about the main characters. When you get to the end, it becomes a different type of love story, and you're like, oh man, have you calling somebody in your life. Like it's beautiful. I love this book. Damn, this is gonna be hard. Because outside of Crimson Cage, which he said he wasn't even counting on anybody voting for it.
Y'all, I think Crimson Cage is one of the ones I'm the most excited about in this whole bowl. When I had to put the sides together, I'm like, what are these bloody hands and a wrestling ring? I'm not going to vote for
Those are the
this.
Weird Sisters. If anyone has read Macbeth, it's a beautiful representation of the Weird
so
Sisters.
bad.
We're putting Shakespeare in libraries, but we're tricking kids into reading the Shakespeare. That's what libraries are for.
Oh, I'm kicking myself that I didn't include something.
And if it's I mean, like, if I've read all other 4 books and I haven't read that's the one I want in the library, is the one that people haven't heard of and the people haven't read already.
Oh my God, Crimson Cage is going to become the Phoenix Omnibus, Peter.
Well, I mean, can I just say? Can I say? I mean, I don't know. Can we put Bone like in the library, and then I'll be less nervous because then we can do, like, can we say that Bone is in contention or whatever it is in the next round?
Bone made it onto more
Miss
than one
Marvel
person's
blankets,
list, so I think it has
already
to.
fine.
I think Peter, how many people put Bone on the list? Have you been keeping?
2?
Nobody picked anything more than twice. There's
wow.
30.
What were the
Blankets,
what were-
Bone,
me and Bone.
Lumberjanes on a Sunbeam.
Wow.
Hell yeah, on a Sunbeam.
Oh man. Okay. So those are potential ends right now.
All right.
I think we need to start trimming. Okay. So far,
Well, let's move on. We have more people to discuss before we vote.
Okay, boss. Larry, anybody have issues with Larry's list?
So I got to give a hard pitch for Larry coming through, because I was so upset that I didn't pick this, but I was like, oh, do we have too many esoteric books on there already? Days of Sand, it is so brilliant. They released it in 2 parts digitally, and I just read the first part because it was in the period of 2019 that I was just like reading every single comic, and I'm like, I guess I'll check it out. It's digital. It's not that expensive. And I immediately, like in seconds, pre-ordered it. I love comics that are about other mediums of art, the way that people say, like, can you dance about architecture? This is very much a comic about photography, in that photography is a documentation of people's lives, but then it's like pull back the camera and say, well, this graphic novel is about documenting photography, really in the heyday of photography being treated seriously as a means of documentation by the US government, as a way of documenting lives. And it's also just the crushing poverty. And I didn't know a lot about the Dust Bowl and this period of American history, and it just does it so effectively, with such humanity, with such brilliant cartooning. It's truly one of the best comics I've ever read.
She's also a fantastic storyteller in terms of her comic language. I did on my TikTok channel, I did a little video about the way she uses panel borders to tell her story, just panel borders, and it's just like she thinks outside the box, and it's absolutely wonderful.
It is a beautiful book. Oh my gosh. I really like all these choices.
I think They Call Us Enemy really should be in more hands. When you think about the education of even adults not understanding any of that happened in
those
the
type
US,
of concentration
especially
camps. Yeah, absolutely.
like that's very important.
Yeah, I didn't know the magnitude of it. I mean, I knew that it happened, but I didn't really know how big it was, and how many lives it affected.
The reason why They Call Us Enemy... The reason why I like They Call Us Enemy is because it's while Mouse is an important comic to understand what was going on in Europe, this one is about the effect that all of this had in North America, in the United States. It was like this happened it happened in my country as well, in Canada as well, to the Japanese people, and so like that's really important to understand and learn from.
It is a very important book. I really love that book. I really enjoyed Motor Girl, but it's not my favorite Terry Moore, but it isn't about being my favorites. I
Yeah.
like the ending and I like the twist.
I almost chose Rachel Rising because to me, if you're talking about like a one and done Terry Moore, that's the one I can more readily recommend.
Yeah, see, like it would
readers.
be
But I like the
strange.
messages in Motor Girl.
And it is short and sweet. I think I would have gone with probably Paradise, Strangers in Paradise.
I'm
But
with
my-
my
well,
dad.
Well, that's
here.
really the challenge with Terry Moore is like every Terry Moore book is so singular and they're all so
Yeah.
enjoyable. Like personally, I kind of agree that Rachel Rising is maybe my pick. But then if I had to pick one Terry Moore book for a library, I don't know if I would pick Rachel Rising. I think Terry Moore, you know, his cartooning is so beautiful. His figures are so distinct and emotionally does such good facial acting that like I don't know if there's anybody else that really compares to him in a lot of ways for me in the way that he just has his characters express things with their nose, their eyebrows, their lips, the way she is on the cover there.
When you think about Terry Moore's stuff too, I mean, he is putting all of that out himself. So
Yeah.
having a very small publisher in a library where it's accessible when it wouldn't be accessible otherwise, I think is also really important.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of people, especially maybe younger people, would pick up Motor Girl just based on the strength of this cover and get more than they bargained for, you know,
Oh yeah.
and get more of a message than they thought they were going to have. But also they get this kooky kind of sci-fi story, right? And then they get so much more by the time the book ends. So it just works on so many levels. So that's why I picked it.
Okay. Thank you, Larry. Is there anybody that's like honestly out of this list for me, like the only one I have issues with is Motor Girl, just because I think there are better choices that we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
Just throwing that there.
But the rest of Larry's list is great. Everybody has a good list.
I mean, no, and Motor Girl is great. It's just, damn it. Crisis, my goodness. Superman smashes the Klan. I love that.
Superman
I
smashes
love
the
that
Klan to
book.
be in every library.
You know, we I
Okay.
said we didn't have manga until we got to Curtis and I, but that book really reads like a manga. I mean, it's sold like a manga, the way that the size of the book looks, and then Gurihiro's artwork. March is so important. It's wonderful. Here, I remember Lydia having those Olympians books. I think she only had 2 of them though. Those were good. I remember enjoying those with her when she was young. And I love the Turtles era, but does that? I can't believe the only one I'm actually having issues with is the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, and that's my favorite incarnation of Turtles, man. It's so good. It's good, but
There were so many books I wanted to put in that 5th slot, and it I was killing me. But I don't know. I just feel like they're the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, I get it. But I mean,
Peter, like that's a chance to convert new readers. Like these are people who are going in saying like, because you've got different readers all going through here, but like that iteration of the Turtles is someone who says, I know the cartoon, I know these characters, I want to check these comic things out. I can pull this out and recognize, oh my gosh, Raph's missing. Where is he? Why don't they have the color band? And it gives this story that can then maybe lead to these other books.
it does. But the only problem that I have with that volume is that it is a slow burn. So even a kid a kid could be like, I don't know, but this is nothing like those cool movies and cartoons. Now, if you had thrown in like volume 3, oh God, yes.
City
Oh
of
my
War,
God, that's so
yeah.
good. Or even Last Ronin, maybe. Like that's like the end of the era. That's like Dark Knight Returns, right, for the Turtles. So that is the only book that I have any issues with. Like, I love your picks. Strong. My kid, Lumberjanes wasn't my favorite, but my daughter loved it. So through her, I can see kids really getting into books because of things like that.
Yeah,
Or
if you're talking
Hera.
about a book for
Damn.
kids, because I could have a lot there like this is essential reading, but I wouldn't say necessarily kids will grab right away. Lumberjanes is one that's an easy. I think like up until like kid, young adult, I would have grabbed this when I was young. Like when I was a kid, I would have grabbed it. When I was in high school, I would have grabbed it. As a college kid, I would grab it now. I
Well,
would
it's
see
got
that and
that
grab
art
it
style.
immediately.
Cartoon Network art style, right? Like kids gravitate
Yeah.
towards. Thank you, Kevin. Here's a book. So glad you guys are talking out there. I'll be donating to my local library. Thank you so much. And yes, we always encourage, if like one of your books or anything that we've chosen that you piques your interest, go donate it because they need it.
Does Kevin's super chat mean that we can now open up additional slots because now we've got more budget?
If YouTube would stop taking 55% of it.
I feel like we have to say too, March is essential reading.
Yeah, it is. I think
It
that's
is.
just
It is. It's that trilogy is amazing, and it do come in a beautiful box set too. Okay. Anybody got anything? Oh, go ahead, Ben. I'm sorry, Bunk Master.
No, it's cool. So we have had a really, really strong representation right now of U.S. history with Superman Smashes the Klan, March, they called us enemy, Days of Sand. I think Angshman was the only one who really took any kind of world history stuff with the Eternaut. I mean, yes, we are talking,
And
most of us. Yeah.
Absolutely.
But are we doing a little bit too strong of North American history? Like, should we start to look to because right now we're picking nits here. Are we doing a little bit too regionalized history? If we're looking, this is an important part of history. Like, should we be looking to expand it to more global stuff with things like the Eternaut, some of those other global stories that need to be told that aren't necessarily going to show up in a U.S. history class?
Those are great points.
Yes, absolutely.
I would also argue
Absolutely.
our U.S. history class are not going to actually teach us what these books are.
Well,
And that's the problem.
As one of the people, of the three people living internationally on this stream, I do agree with you, but I want to slightly rebut that. When Kid Crisis read March the other night, she said, "Oh, we learn about Rosa Parks in school here in New Zealand because it's not just American history; it's civil rights history internationally." So I think the fact that my kid who's growing up in New Zealand already knew, and then she said, "Ooh, is Dr. King in this too?" Like excited, like it was going to be a Superman appearance. And so, good job, New Zealand school, right down the block. Righteous.
wow.
But wow, I'm going to probably cry now. But then B, yeah, I don't think March is just American history. Superman smashes the Klan, although I think that's also important historically. I absolutely give you that it's pretty America centric, even though clearly there's things about it that everyone around the globe should know. But I don't know. I'd be interested in the perspective of my other two international friends here about to what extent are some civil rights stories actually universal stories.
I think that you're absolutely right. For Superman Smashes the Klan as an Asian, I really recommend that book. I think that one is very important, and I'm glad that there's some more Asian representation in other people's choices as well, including They Called Us Enemy. So I think that from that perspective, it doesn't matter what country it's from.
I'd like to, I mean, this is going to sound maybe horrible, but I'd like to also say that in the other way, that, because of nobility or what have you, we'd always want to lean towards these books are really good for you because they teach you stuff and they are about history and they're about reality, etc. And it's fine. And all of us will be very supportive of that. But somewhere I also know that comics are often looked upon as a remedial sort of thing. Oh, my kid won't read, so get them into real reading through comics, and comics are the gateway to reading, and comics are a good way to have something half digested. It's illustrated, it's not as complex as real reading. And I think a lot of leaning on the value of the comics intent and what it's about, rather than look at the fantastic drawings, look at the cool panel work, look at the excellent transitions of the way time is used, etc. I would like to think about comics that are fantastic comics as using the comics medium fantastically, not to say that they shouldn't, but not just saying, not just saying that, did you know you could also do journalism in comics? Did you know you could also do history in comics? And if there is history and there is a history book that you can go out and read, and a comic is just a comic version of that history book in a way that isn't, like, I'm always looking for, like, why did this have to be comics? Or what does it get from being comics that it doesn't get from being a documentary or doesn't get from being prose? And so it's just the kind of corrective measure I say. When I get too self-important and my list fills up with things that are just, oh, this will make me look really smart online. That time I have to say that, like, for example, I think Superman Smashes the Klan is a fantastic book. But I also think the Avatar, The Last Airbender comics that Jean Luen Yang did with Guru Hiru are also fantastic. They won't get the same, they won't get the same platform, but they equal thing. They talk about immigration and refugees after the Fire Nation has retreated, etc. are complex stories, and they're representing in a very different way by saying that it's not about them being outsiders, but just everyone's representation in a multicultural society. But at the same time, I think all of us would sort of lean towards Superman Smashes the Klan way before we would ever pick out, The Gift or The Promise or, one of the 5 or 6 Avatar books they did.
Kid Crisis literally has those out from the library right now. So I think she endorses your platform, I think.
I'm going to move on to Maddie. Unless somebody has some strong opinions about Peter's choices like that. No, absolutely not. Okay.
Actually, I think Kristen next.
Oh, Kristen, I'm sorry. With an A. Thank you, Larry. I love your choices. They're strong. I mean, Essex County and Bone made it on my top 10. Lumberjanes I talked about. I love On a Sunbeam because of Maddie introducing me to that book. The only one I think, Ghost World, but you kind of sold it as like this is the weird one. I love that book, and there are weird kids that go to libraries, but how many weird kids compared to like, because if you're feeling, if the thing is like,
only weird kids go to libraries.
That's right.
That's not true at all. That's not true at all.
Mostly it's true, in the best way. I mean, like, I assume all of us were weird kids before, or else we wouldn't be here.
I guess my question about Ghost World is, as I haven't read it for a really, really long time, is it too quintessentially Gen X now? Like, does it read like a historical book about teenagers? I don't know.
It's very Gen X.
Since I've read it.
Yeah, that's a good question. I haven't read it like recently either. But we could argue
I think you're
about
right.
some of these other ones, right?
That is true. So there are things that are dated here, right? I mean, and we can even argue about like Batman Year One. There are a lot of things that are dated in Batman Year One, so I don't think there's anything wrong with having a period piece in here as a representing that particular era. I just think it's a weird book that not a lot of people get, even adults. And I like the book. Don't get me wrong. But whenever I talk about Daniel on my streams, there's always a few people like, this is guy's just weird for the sake of being weird, and I don't get it, and I understand. So
I think that's ultimately why I threw it in here too, because I'm like, here's a weird comic, and there's a whole world of weird alternative comics that we're not talking about,
Yeah, but I don't know if
like Hardcore Anxiety by Reed Chancellor. That guy's really cool.
I will say it's one of the few picks out of everybody that really represents that, like, in that indie comics, that specific kind of a lot of these are independent comics, but Ghost World is a very specific kind of indie comic that I do think it's important to see representation of.
Yes, but you could fool people into thinking Essex County is kind of that indie comic because of the art style.
But it's certainly not weird. Because I think
not at all.
I think you're thinking of more like the alternative comic scene, which exists. And it's weird.
It is. You're right.
In that same vein, I'm kind of surprised that we didn't get any Love and Rockets here. That was another one I was expecting to see Maggie and the mechanic showing up.
I almost feel like that's too niche in a way. You know what I mean? Because it's hard, because it's also hard to choose between that and like Strangers in Paradise, because you have two, like, it's tough. But I mean, I love that though.
Yeah,
you're talking about too niche, but then you have Upgrade Soul on your list there.
Yeah, because it should be in every library. It won't be. As God is my witness, it won't be niche anymore.
I will say the two of you sold me hard on A Sunbeam. Like, I'm literally going to end the stream and go reserve On a Sunbeam
for the show. If you want to do it, we'll do it.
Let's go.
Oh, maybe I have to wait for a new reader. All right, we'll think about it.
I don't know what an intermission is. Oh yeah, you've never seen me do like a marathon of movies?
I think
Absolutely.
we should have a Tai Chi break midstream.
You want a Tai Chi break?
I worked for a Chinese office. We did a lot of those breaks every day. So
Okay. Anybody else have issues with Kristen Slaggy asking the question like that? But like strong opinions on any of these books.
They're good.
Don't be shy. I see Curtis's face. He's frowning.
Well, we
It's
know
fine 'cause he
Curtis was
knows
the
we're about
I
first
to talk
have
about
one.
it.
a strong opinions because I like them all, except I haven't read On the Sunbeam.
Curtis.
Curtis, come on the stream too. Everybody.
Just make everyone who hasn't read it. Come on.
I
Omar,
will.
you came to roast the Omar on your. Yeah, come at me, man. I'll take it. We'll do some kind of like charity thing. You can come and roast me. Okay. Wow, I'm the only jerk that said something about Ghost World. I guess.
I mean,
moving
I'm
on.
not a Klaus fan. So I would be with you there, but you already said everything that I needed to cover
Okay.
there.
Yeah,
Larry?
I'd say I like Ghost World, but when I look at this lineup, Ghost World is the one I would cut from that for the same
Great
reasons
lineup.
that you pointed out, Omar. Because I think Essex County sort of can stand in for that and do other
Yeah,
stuff
scratches
that it
that itch,
doesn't do.
right?
It's a very localized thing, which is fantastic. But I think Essex County is localized and universal in a way that you've got to get to the last page of Ghost World before you care about everything. And Essex County, you kind of care from the second page onwards.
Oh,
so
God,
from that
so
point
good.
of view.
I don't know if there's a big Portuguese community, but thank you so much for asking and to even offer to donate some stuff. Thank you. That's so nice.
I mean, I guess
okay.
I'll throw one punch since I haven't said anything.
Do it,
negative
Peter.
this
Come on.
whole stream.
Peter, why are you
A
doing
lot
this
of
to me?
libraries now, they have playrooms for kids. They have space to relax. And I think if a library had a nap room, they could fill that with Jeff Lemire comics because that's what I would read.
There it is. There it is.
I thought
Wow.
we were going to be besties, Peter. What happened?
He's
Well,
so
we were
good.
Lumberjanes Besties, Kristen, so I feel like I
All
could
right.
come out
No,
heavy
that's
against
okay.
one
That's
of them.
fine.
Yeah, see, the only thing here I would question, and I can't really question it because I haven't read it, and I'm not going to be that guy, but
You are. You're about to
Lumberjanes
be.
is probably not for me. But I didn't think Essex County was for me or Blankets, and those are two of my favorite books of all time now. So,
Hmm.
It could be.
You should read it. It's I read it with I actually did a show with Maddie and my daughter about Lumberjanes. My daughter loved it more than I did. But you may like it.
My dad also
yeah.
hasn't read Bone, so
no, I have not. But I've seen enough from it, and I know enough about it. I think that it belongs on here for sure.
Okay. Huh. You need to get on that, Larry.
Yeah, I know. I do.
Moving on to Curtis with his interesting and amazing picks. Curtis, I love your choice. Understanding Comics needs to be on this list. Lone Wolf and Cub. I don't even know how I can say no to that. Uncle Scrooge, I think you should have gone with Life and Times, but that's just a personal taste, and I have to stop thinking like that.
Well, and just as a caveat, Curtis just said the complete Carl Banks library. I picked that cover because Uncle Scrooge was swimming in coins, and I grew up in the 1980s and 1990s. But he
about
picked
DuckTales.
the library. I just want to be clear that he picked the series.
The entire library.
This is true. So if we vote that one, we get to see
What the
Omar
hell?
shell out
said
the number one
series
dime.
are okay. Lumberjanes is
Some of those
19
books are out of print.
You don't have to buy them
one.
all. You could buy the first.
Seven Cities of Gold is the inspiration for Temple of Doom, that rolling rock. Isn't that the story in there, Curtis? The boulder that's
Yep,
rolling?
that's right.
Still got
So,
it. Maybe.
Life and Times is fantastic, and there's no disputing that. But I think that you get just as much good stuff as Life and Times plus more if you go back to the original Karl Barks stuff. I mean, if you just want one singular Uncle Scrooge volume, then yes, Life and Times. But there's so much more to offer when you talk about the Karl Barks library.
Okay. I love you, Curtis, before I say this. And I know how much For Better or For Worse means to you. But I think For Better or For Worse and Tearing the Pirates are the ones that I just come in and say no. Because I think Tearing the Pirates, definitely coming from a classic standpoint, of course, I get it. But I can't imagine it. And it's not because it's $100, by the way. I'm just making that clear to the chat out there that's watching. It's not because it's $100 and some of those volumes are out of print. It's just part of having the books in the library are so people can check them out, and you have to lure them with a cover. And I don't know if that cover would lure anyone. I mean, it's interesting, but when I see the dates 1934, 1935, be like, man, I don't want to read. That's old. I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm over.
Omar, have you read Terry and the Pirates?
I have 2 volumes up there.
Oh, good. I'm glad to say.
I love. Oh my god, his artwork.
You know-
Milton's art is amazing, and yes, he influenced so many freaking artists. I get it from like a historical, from a historical point in comics. Absolutely, it's wonderful. I mean, but so is Will Eisner's Spirit. You know, there are books like that I think of, or even Prince Valiant. I don't know, man. Those are tough. Like, there is a reason why they don't really reprint them too, because I mean the first sells weren't the best, and I gotta stop.
So Terry and the Pirates, while they do go in and out of print, has been constantly in print by different publishers ever since the 1940s.
Okay. But I mean, for better or worse, I just think of other comic strips like Peanuts or Calvin and Hobbes or Farside, right? I think to get when I think of if our 10 books need a representation of a comic strip, and one of those, I just think of other comic strips. Again, I'm coming from a place of love. I love and respect you.
No. That's what this is. Yeah, we're supposed to be having this discussion.
Yeah, I don't think those are strong contenders. I've already stated that Understanding Comics is totally, and thank you so much for the Love of Comics for calling me out for that. Totally getting donated, no matter, even if it doesn't make it on the top 10. They'll be the 11th one. Well, hell, we might make it 12 after all this is done.
I'll say a couple things. So Terry and the Pirates, I actually, out of all these, it's probably like the number 3 that I'm the most interested to reserve. So by my own rules, I will have to vote for it. But, we see so much libraries have like library sales, and the library sales are books that don't get circulated a lot, right? And they also have kind of like their back catalog location that the things that don't get circulated a lot goes to first. And then if they don't get circulated from there, then they wind up getting sold. And I just have this fear that like Terry and the Pirates just wouldn't get circulated a lot. And it's like, I'm not saying it's like not important. I really want to read it right now, but I'm like, and so for me, I need it to be at the library. But I'm like, oh, like, are we like dooming it to not be checked out? I don't know. But here's my other thing.
I'll pick it up. I
was going to say Oxtrabot's going to pick it up for cheap.
Sounds perfect. It's a good plan.
We won't know until it gets in the library.
Right, we won't. I mean, that's part of it too. I think one of our flaws on these Evergreen streams is we start second guessing, like, but would the person buy it or ask for it or whatever? And it's like, no, sometimes we got to just go with our gut and say, like, this thing is important enough. And that's why I ultimately will vote for it. But I just have to get it out there. I will say, though, Understanding Comics, I own that. And I think it's critically important. I think anybody within the sound of my voice right now, I know you love comics. Please read this book. It's not just to help you understand comics. It's because it's going to help you love comics even more. Having said that, I don't think it has place on a graphic novels list. Like, it's a reference book to me. It's a how-to book. It's not, yes, it's a graphic novel, and we said graphic novels, but I just can't vote for it on the same level as I'm voting for these other books, even the autobio books. I don't know. Am I being weird? Like,
no, you're speaking. Yeah,
you're being very weird.
You're not okay. You're not being weird, but you're being wrong.
You're a weird heart.
I would agree. At least at my local library, it's not shelved with graphic novels. And I will say, neither are comic strips.
I mean,
yeah, it's because they comic strips predate books predate graphic novels, so they have their own code in the Dewey Decimal System, and comics don't.
Whoa,
so they get shelved differently.
You're gonna find it in a whole other section. Is my point, though. So if you're going to get graphic novels, they're not going to be there.
But what's a graphic novel? I mean, would Uncle Scrooge, The Seven Cities of Gold, be a graphic novel? I mean,
it would be in that section. Yes.
Oh, it would be in the graphic novel, and Lone Wolf and Cub would be in the graphic, but those are serialized collections as well.
Yes.
Correct. So
it depends. Yeah, I mean,
strips. They were also periodicals. They were also serialized over a period of time in various journals, just the way comic strips were.
Yeah, the term graphic novels has, of course, changed over the years, but in the early aughts, I think it was mainly a business decision, right, from bookstores to start calling things graphic, like their sections, graphic novels instead of comics, because for some reason the word comics is just kiddish, so you're not going to attract like other people that are not kids to
but that
to
was
that section.
primarily like North American, UK kind of thing to
I know that-
distinguish from the local comic store or the drugstore
Yeah.
spinner rack?
I know it started. Where was it? Waterstone. I think it was Waterstone in England started doing it, and then Barnes and Noble and places over when we used to have Borders.
Well, I mean, Will Eisner called Contract with God a graphic
but
novel.
that is an actual graphic novel, right?
No,
So
it's a
when you're-
collection of 3 stories. I mean, it's not one novel.
Okay,
It's
okay,
not
okay,
one
yes,
thing.
yes.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
But
But
eventually,
I mean, we call a lot of things graphic novels that are not novels. I mean, autobiographies that are 1 volume are not novels; they're non-fiction. We call reportage graphic novels also, but they're not novels. So, graphic novels just means 1 volume comic work of a certain length. Because I mean, I think if we say comics, then we don't have any controversy. You know, we just say 10 comics that need to be in the library, or 10 comics that I.
that's what
want
the
to give to
thumbnail
people.
says.
Yeah.
To play it safe, because I understand how people, there's been this debate for years. You have people from the old guard that don't like the term graphic novel unless you're actually talking about things like the death of Captain Marvel, like an original OGN, right? Original graphic novel. But there's a whole generation of kids or people now that going into college that's all they've heard is graphic novel.
Right. So what I'm saying is, understanding comics would still qualify as a as a comic, as a volume, as 1 book.
I would think so. Yeah.
I mean, the great
And
news
there was a time
is-
when people, sorry, there was a time when people would use the term graphic novel to separate themselves from comics, and they would turn their nose up at comic books. Oh, I don't read comics; I only read graphic novels.
Yeah.
So that has kind of left a bad taste
Yep.
in a lot of people's mouths. Or
So ridiculous. Yeah.
I was just going to say real quick, like this could be its own stream about like defining graphic novels, but it is largely irrelevant because again, none of us need to vote for understanding comics because it's already on the list. Omar said he's already getting that one, so that already gets an honorary spot. So we don't even need to like figure out is this a graphic? Like nobody voted for it, and it still gets on. That's a free roll right there.
True. Very true.
Despite of how Peter feels about it, I'm buying the copy. All right. Anybody have any issues with Curtis's pick outside of understanding comics?
I feel the same way for better or worse. Curtis, I know that like this is your life's work, and I understand like how big of a decision that is. That it was a, it's a comic that moved with the reader, and we got to see something like that. But I do think if we are buying for a library, I think like Calvin and Hobbes and Peanuts would be the 2 like sort of quintessential before we sort of look beyond, at least from my perspective.
I gotta come
I mean,
to that
that's-
as somebody who remembers.
if you're
reading
going
Better
to-
Force. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
I was going to say if you're comparing comic strips to comic strips, then I would agree with you. But I mean, those are very. It's like comparing Lone Wolf and Cub to Pokemon. Like they're very, very different comic strips. They're both manga, but they're both completely different books. So I think comparing it to Calvin and Hobbes just because it's a comic strip is not fair.
That's
Yeah, for me,
Does that make sense?
For
No,
better, for
that
worse,
totally makes
is
sense.
more about sequential storytelling, not only from a panel standpoint, but when I think of comic strip comics that I had to keep reading in the dailies and in the Sunday paper when I was sitting at my grandmother's table, it was things like For Better or for Worse, Doonesbury, Bloom's County, which turned into Outland, because they weren't just a gag. And Calvin and Hobbes is so much more than just a gag, and it's one of my favorite things in any medium.
Oh, absolutely.
But For Better or for Worse, there's just something uniquely powerful about it, and I think it's a little bit more present if we're making this argument against some of Curtis's picks than like Terry and the Pirates. Like I don't know. I mean, I see that argument for Better for Worse, but if you made me choose between the complete Better for Worse and the complete Peanuts, I would actually vote for Better or for Worse.
Really? Maybe we should do a comic strip evergreen that sounds more like a fight there. That's really interesting.
I am all over that. That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
I
let's
love
do
that.
I totally get behind that argument of like if you're
Justice
looking
for Bloom
at
County.
the comics, I mean Bloom County, Opus the Penguin, that strip, Billy and the Bangers. I still have my 45 as part of it, so I'm
Oh, man,
right
that's
there
awesome.
with you. But
yes, baby.
but yeah, and especially like how the idea of like the decompressed story is like the way that comics are told right now. I mean, you want to talk about decompressed, like one comic a day, for however long. Yeah, so there's something there.
Yep.
You won me over, Curtis. You got me on that one.
Woohoo! Oh my God, we haven't voted anything out yet. Anyone else?
Also,
have
I
anything
think,
to say?
I mean, we're supporting the picks here, right? That's what we're doing. We're saying,
Yeah, but if anybody has issues, say your issues.
yeah, right.
So
No,
we can
because
just
I
go yes,
think,
no.
because I've only read a little bit of for better or for worse, but also what was being talked about, like most of the time, comics and comic characters are thought of as very static and frozen in time. We don't have love and rockets on anyone's suggestion and things like that. This is maybe the only one over here which you have aging characters and come across a period of time over a number of things, because even things like Lone Wolf and Cub and the longer series, they all sort of stay the same. And how comics work with time, I think, is a very important part of comics. So from that point of view, it certainly makes a good case for it as a representation of comics.
Beautifully said.
Okay, I need to be talked against voting.
Oh, right. That's what I was checking. I wanted to, before I launched into that, I wanted to know, do you want me to be tearing things down or building them up?
A mix of both, I guess.
All right. Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I have no help with this one. I've only read For Better For Worse and Uncle Scrooge. So, and I like them, but that's all. Keep me any help.
And that's okay, because you got to think about it. If you haven't read it, would it attract you? I mean, if you, right, I think that would be the way to approach it. Would it attract you to go and pick it off the shelf? Which is an unfair thing to say, but I mean, the covers do speak a lot sometimes. I know, when I check out a movie or when I was checking out graphic novels, that's how I judged. Maddie's, you came in with some strong. I believe you. And please correct me if I'm wrong. You came in with books that are like you personally love. Like these are books you love that you would love to see.
Well, and also I know that if you look at a lot of like top 10 graphic novel lists, you're going to get a lot of the same people, and a lot of them will look the same. And so for me, I was trying to think, okay, look more at women and non-binary and queer people and look more so on that list, with the exception of Upgrade Soul, to try to like diversify the picks, because I'm like, yeah, of course, Mouse will be on there, Bone will be on there, Watchmen, I get that. And so me, I'm like, I just want to make sure that these other voices are represented. I think there's a lot of
I like that
throughout.
It's a good way.
So for me, that's what I was looking for. Like, Human Star's not going to be for everybody. That's fine. Sheets, I'm willing to give up for Lumberjanes.
No, I will defend Sheets for you. I think
I love Sheets more than Lumberjanes. Go ahead, Peter.
Yeah, I think there's so many comics that kind of like are YA, where it's like, oh, will like an adult ever read this? And or they're YA, and there's this fear of putting a whimsical thing into YA because then it becomes a genre comic. And it's like, oh, if we want like a YA comic, it just sits about teenagers and their feelings, right? But like Sheets subverts all of that, because Sheets actually works for people no matter what age you are, which Lumberjane's one of my picks and a classic. I don't know if it works for all adults as well as Sheets does. And Sheets is not afraid of that whimsical element. It's making it into like a fantasy comic. Like to me, that's why I think Sheets is absolutely essential. Also, I have to say, don't say the Upgrade Soul isn't representative. I know nothing about it because I haven't come onto your show to read it yet, and I promised I would talk about you when I read it, or to you when I read it. But as far as I know, just from the cover, it's Teletubby representation, right? Like it's a book about that's a Teletubby, right? It's a book about Teletubbies.
It's something.
You have no idea.
You have no clue.
The cover is bad, but let's just agree the cover is bad.
It's not a great
It
cover.
doesn't-
It's about
it's
about a Teletubby impersonating an old man, and until I read it, that's what I'm going to do.
The covers for those weird kids you all are talking about that go to libraries apparently with their skateboards, and they're like, oh, I want to read something weird.
I mean, that weird cover got me to pick it up from my
See
library.
what I mean?
And now it has come to me. We've spread it.
And then I was like, Maddie, read this.
This book is so much better than the cover, though. I don't think the cover does it justice. Yeah.
Okay, so
Also,
Monstrous. I feel Monstrous like the way Peter feels about Jeff Lemire. Like if you
Peter also feels that way
bore
about Monstrous, so I
somebody,
expect
like, I love the artwork, and I think it's partly because, like, when I see Takeda's artwork, I immediately think, oh, this is going to be a quick read, and it's not. It is huge and dialogue heavy and dense and beautiful artwork. That's the only one on this list that I have a problem with, as far as like if I have to start knocking things off mentally, like that one there. I love Sheets. I think it definitely belongs. I think Upgrade Soul is definitely weird and definitely belongs in a sci-fi slot.
I'm with you, Omar. Monstrous is too dense and boring for me. And I mean, I take credit for the 4 other ones for making Maddie.
Oh, is it?
I made her read all of them.
I feel like Kristen, between Maddie and your dad, you're taking credit for like 15 choices here.
I have to give it up for
Kristen is giving me the person who comes to bingo and has multiple cards that they're doing
bingo.
Kristen's playing 3 different lists at once.
That's right. That's right.
Well done, Kristen. Damn it,
yeah,
Larry.
I gotta give it up for O Human Star, which I think would be a nice pick for a library because again, Blue is self-publishing that stuff. So to be able to have those things accessible, I could get Sheets on Hoopla. I can get on A Sunbeam somewhere else. Like Upgrade Soul's also on Hoopla. I don't think it is, but there are other options. So accessibility wise, which I think is a huge part of having libraries, like having these things accessible to people, that would be cool to have.
But I mean,
accessibility, that's what I was saying too.
Is a library. I mean, again, like the whole point of this is like that every library should have. So you're saying like, yeah, well, that library already has it. So like this library we're building doesn't need it, which again, I think kind of gets to the whole like, what is the objective of this stream here?
No, I mean, if you have access to Hoopla at your library, you're already going to have access.
But I do know that there are a lot of people that don't. Like, it's not accessible everywhere.
Weirdly, me doesn't have Hoopla.
But you have access, and I've told you that.
Oh, yeah, no, I've got access to my library is great. They have everything. I can ask for any of these books and they get them, so I'm not worried about that.
That's awesome. Does anybody else want to say things about Maddie's choices? Pros, cons?
I think this is the only one in which I haven't read 2 of the books. I haven't read O Human Star and Sheets, so I'm very excited about discovering new ones. On A Sunbeam and Upgrade Soul are masterpieces, but I don't like Monstrous at all.
That's fine. We can take Monstrous off. That's okay.
Oh,
okay.
Out of all of these books,
was just
the cat.
Sorry.
Go ahead, Curtis. Curtis?
Out of all of the books in this live stream, I haven't read 6. Oh, am I there?
Yeah.
Out of all of the books on this live stream, I haven't read 6 of them.
Oh.
And 4 of them are on this list here in Maddie's picks.
I feel great about that.
That's wonderful. Yeah, I wrote down 2 books that I'm reading. O Human Star, I haven't read it. And that weird wrestling thing Ben mentioned earlier.
Yeah,
I read that.
That's one of the other ones. No, it's great. No, I'm excited to. I'm looking up in my libraries now to see if they're available.
Awesome. Okay, I'm gonna move on. That way we don't. Angshaman's choices are freaking amazing. Like how do you even argue against the Eternaut? I love Astro City. Okay. You know what? I love Astro City. I think you're one of the smartest guys on YouTube, but I would take out Astro City. I would, because I'm in my head not replacing, like I don't have an imaginary library that has superhero books, right? And if I have to have a superhero book in there, I want kids to immediately recognize it. Not just kids, adults, people that go and watch these movies and watch the shows, to something that they've seen already. And Astro City, even though it's very epic, I love the Alex Ross covers. I just feel like it's not as iconic. And I agree with you. It is one of the greatest superhero comics ever written. I love that book. I think it's amazing, and it probably does deserve a slot in the library. That's the only book I have an issue with. I love all these other books, and I'm like, okay, maybe it's my love of them that's making me think I'm gonna vote against them. Damn. How do we build a list without Usagi? It's black and white. That's all I got. I have no idea. This is
There are
difficult.
color editions now. If that's
Shut up!
it's like
Why
porn.
would
You can have it in whichever version you want.
Oh my gosh. Maybe,
Also, four of the books on here are black and white.
Yeah, you're right. Maybe Paracuellos? Maybe that one? Because and I'm being greedy because I chose Mouse. If I'm going to choose between the two, then I'm going to go with Mouse. But that is a great comic, and also one that I don't see anywhere on anyone's list. You came in swinging big, man. And there were people that didn't even know Eternaut.
I love that you picked Eternaut. It's not a personal favorite of mine, but when I read it, because I just like randomly, I saw the cover. I'm like, okay, I'll read it. I don't think I realized how influential it is, like on the form, on storytelling, and it's I describe it as it's world of the worlds for comics, commenting on issues and on humanity in a similar way of War of the Worlds. Even though I know a lot of us are kind of trending towards like, oh, well, if people won't take it off the shelf, should it be in a library? That I think the Eternaut is just such a juggernaut of the medium that it's hard for me to play that, like, do enough people know the name of the book game on it the way that I am on some of the other ones.
Yeah, I mean,
well, and if we're talking about, sorry, go ahead.
No, sorry, go ahead.
If we're talking about bringing in more books to do with world history, Eternaut is an allegory for the war we're going at the time in Argentina.
But it is a smart allegory in the way that it covers everything up, even though like you have to look at it like deep, right? And I love books like that are they're not in your face about what they really are.
Yeah, I would say that, unlike, say, something like Animal Farm, which you can just directly say, look, it's a one-to-one sort of thing. It's really not. Yeah, it's not like that. It's more about the forces, and so it starts with this kind of radioactive snow that sort of falls and kills anyone it touches, and only the people who are inside survive. And so even that whole idea of hermetically sealing yourself in because of the thing outside, even something like the pandemic made it suddenly very relevant and very immediate, which had nothing to do with authoritarianism or didn't have anything to do with military. It's just the storytelling of it and the human sort of situations and the drama. And I agree. And I think for me, it's also like, I only read the Eternaut when the reprint of Fantagraphics, because it was so out of print, so about 6 or 7 years ago, I think the same time. So the thing is, it's a masterpiece that is widely recognized as a masterpiece. It's incredibly influential. And someone who's been reading comics all their life didn't read it until 5 or 6 years ago. And, I'm of advanced years. So I think that's exactly what a library should be resolving. That's exactly what it should be compensating for, is those gaps in our things. Is because, to just say to you, Omar, is like, yeah, you're going to pick Mouse over Paracuellos because Mouse is in all the libraries, and therefore it's a known entity. And it's the same reason why the kids come in and ask for Batman, is because it's the same thing repeats and it's a snowball effect. It's the thing that's popular becomes more popular, and that's the thing that people know, and that's where you get brand recognition. You're never going to spark that without having it first available. And if you always want it to be something that people are asking for to make it available, then you're only ever going to give people what they've already heard of. And that may not be just, or that may not be fair, or that may not even be completing our picture of things. It might end up normalizing a certain impression of things where people are not aware that, there are comics from Argentina. Really? I didn't know that. I thought it was, Japan and France and the United States. So it's those kind of things that I wanted to try to sort of, and of course I said that the library already has Mouse, etc. But that was kind of my point, is like how, why do people talk a lot about A and not about B? Why do people talk so much about Blankets, which is, a fantastic and very popular book, but not around some other autobiographies in black and white, etc., which are maybe as good or as potent as Blankets? And I think a lot of it has to do with the bookshelves and which the big publisher put on which bookshelves. So somewhere I thought of a library. I was trying to think of a library as a repository or as a vault for things that are not only about popularity but about importance. So I guess that was the approach for all of them, because that's the way I feel about Usagi Yojimbo and Lone Wolf and Cub as well. And I think, Frank Miller got to do so much because he read Lone Wolf and Cub, and then he made stuff and everyone was like, oh my God, we've never seen anything like this before. And many years later, when Lone Wolf and Cub was reprinted in English, then people were like, this looks this looks a lot like Frank Miller.
You always bring some amazing knowledge to this and open up my eyes to the world, because I don't think about this often because I do live in America, but in America it does still feel like we're in that. I think we're past the infant state of like expanding our graphic novel universe, that there's more books out there, and a lot of that has to do with manga, of course, the big manga boom. But I mean, keep this in mind, that didn't happen until the late 90s, early aughts. Humanoids were, the humanoids that we know now is so different back then. I think it was DC that was publishing humanoids books back in the late 90s and early aughts again. It wasn't until I want to say it wasn't that long ago that Humanoids was actually an established publisher. Magnetic Press, that's still a baby in the publishing industry, and they're bringing out a lot of European books. Like I didn't even know Tintin was a comic until the HBO show. You knew of Tintin for years, and so did everybody. It feels like everybody but us in America would knew about all these wonderful stories. And I don't know how it was in Canada, Curtis, so I can't speak for Canada, but at least for me, going to comic book stores, going to the library, going to comic shows. I think comic shows is the one exception that I would actually see graphic novels from other countries, because I got excited when I saw Condorito from Peru. I had never seen that. That was in 1997 at a show randomly. So when you're talking about important books in the library and books that need to be there to expand people's horizons, Eternaut is definitely one of those books for me that I agree with you. And I mean, there's a lot of others, but I think my point was that you brought up so many amazing points, and I was like, maybe I was looking at this wrong, and I'm still not going to vote for Astro City though.
Yeah, we want comics that kids can read, so I'll give them Watchmen.
So that you just made this so much harder than it was before, man. And I love you for that. Thank you. To me, this was going to be okay. This is going to be easy, right? We're all going to pick Mouse. We're all going to pick this and this, and because it's like the staple book that needs to be there. But opening up people's eyes to this world that exists outside their window is part of what a library is supposed to do. So you're right. I'm gonna get the super chat really quick from the ever generous Nick. Thank you so much, Nick. Caught some of this live and wanted to give some support. Omar and team bring great content on their shows, and want to show my thanks, asking everyone to please hit that thumbs up. Another great way to support Near Mint Edition. Likes are free and support is priceless. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Well, now with the truth bomb that For the Love of Comics just dropped, does anybody have anything to say about his picks besides me?
I only vote for Ang Shimon's choices forever.
Oh my gosh. Don't be afraid. He doesn't bite. Anybody else besides me have a problem with Astro City?
I'm fine with Astro City being taken off.
No,
Actually,
you stand your ground, man. Stand your ground. Nobody else.
There are these choices out there as well, and honestly, I wanted a representation of superhero comics, but I did want it contained. But I don't think of it. And the other thing is that I had a list of about 50 books, but I ended up with 5 by all male authors. So that's something I'm a little irritated by, because my long list didn't, but somehow my N5 did. So
Yeah.
I will say that I wish we could live in a world where I knew as many people would read Astro City as Watchmen. Like I put them in the same category for people who are out there who love Watchmen and like what Watchmen did for their ability to kind of dissect and understand, but also venerate and worship superhero comics and superhero storytelling. Astro City is also that. And I'm so happy it's back in print. It was so hard to get for so long that these Metro books have made it available again and made it really easy to pick up. And then I think there's also going to be omnibuses forthcoming, if I recall Kurt Busius confirming that. So I would just say it's not as dense as Watchmen because it's a whole epic series. So don't expect like it to punch as hard and as quickly as Watchmen. But if you're somebody who really loves Watchmen for what it is in the form and not just for the story of the squid and all that stuff, you please give Astro City a try. I wish a tenth as many people or 100th as many people as read Watchmen would give Astro City a try.
I'm gonna have to. I haven't read it, and I'm not a Watchmen fan at all.
It's the opposite of Watchmen, right?
Yeah,
Watchmen
it's the opposite of Watchmen.
Construction of superheroes.
Perfect.
Astro City is the reconstruction of superhero comics. That's what I love about both of those books.
Yeah, and it's also got some Miracle Man DNA in it too.
Oh, yes, especially the very first book that is on this list. Absolutely.
Well, also, I think that Astro City is a much more optimistic look at superheroes. It's really, it's got that gee whiz kind of thing, but then a sort of ground level view, which Kurt Busiek is very good at, like with Marvels and things like, it's just like you have the superheroes, but then you have the secretary at the Baxter Building, or whatever the equivalent of the Baxter Building is, the person who's Reed Richards' receptionist or something like that. And I would also like to say that the first volume, I mean, now with the Metro books, they're all sort of mushed together, but the first volume of Astro City, Life in the Big City, is 5 short stories. They're 5 single one-shots that were put together. And then the second series is a continuing series over a 6 or 7 issue arc. And then the third book is a collection of short stories and one-shots. The fourth book is a continuing series. So Astro City is also much more accessible than Watchmen, because the first volume is perhaps the best #1 volume of a long-running series I've ever read. I mean, it's just most series take a while to, and even series that I like Fables, the first volume isn't representative of what comes later. Astro City hits the ground running with the story of the Samaritan, the story of the, they give you 5 stories about 5 different people. You don't need to have any other context, and they're just perfect short stories. They've got great twist endings. They've got wonderful lines, and they continue to do that throughout. So if you read Confession, it's a longer arc, but then the next one is short stories. So that way, I think Astro City only looks intimidating because you say, oh, there are 17 volumes or something like that, but half of them are short story collections that can be read in any sequence because they also go back and forth in time and flashbacks. So you could read volume 5 first and then come back to volume 2 and you would have had references. So I can't think of many other superhero comics that do that with that level of consistency and that level of, and that's the same thing, that's why I like Usagi Yojimbo and Lone Wolf and Cub as well. You can just step in at any point of time and then go back and read whatever you haven't if you want to. And it makes very little difference to that new reader, which I think is absolutely important for getting people into comics.
So look, the point is, even if it doesn't make the
I changed my mind. I'm not dropping Astro City.
Yes, you stood your ground. That's
for
it. Back on there.
Even if it doesn't make the top 10, everybody should read Astro City. It's an amazing story. I also love it. Does anybody got anything to say about any of Angshuman's other books?
Pericles is fantastic.
Okay. I mean, again, Curtis, you're not helping any. Damn it. All right, Omar's picks. Yep. Come at me.
Oh boy.
I feel like you could drop Akira because of Lone Wolf and Cub and the other. I think if we're trying to like diversify, right?
Mm-hmm. You mean if we have one manga in there?
Yeah. Also, I don't like Watchmen. I get scared to say that in public, but I don't. I think it's.
But I mean,
I don't think it's essential reading at all. Marvel's great. Mouse great. I didn't read Calvin Hobbes. There we go. There's my.
Wow, Maddie coming in as hot as you possibly could come on hot on this list of 5 books.
So
Now, see, I love Watchmen and I love Marvels, but I think we could eliminate these two because I think to really get the context and the deeper meaning of both of these, I feel like you need a good background of reading superhero comics. And if you haven't already done that, then I think they can still work, especially Marvels, but not nearly as powerfully. You know, you're not going to understand all of the satirical elements and the breakdown of it all if you haven't already been reading superhero books. So I feel like they're
comment, Larry.
I'm going to maybe say something.
I would agree with that, except there's a
after Curtis talks, I'll say my transgressive thing.
there's a lot more to. I think there's a lot more to Watchmen than you could pick out because Watchmen is consistently on university reading lists, like English literature reading lists, not because of the superhero breakdown of that,
Right.
but more of the commentary on the politics and society and such. And so I think there's a lot that you can pull out without having a knowledge of superheroes in general. I think Watchmen is still good to be on the list. I would probably keep Akira over Marvels though, as a just a better story in general.
So here's my possibly transgressive comment about Marvels. I feel like Marvels in the 25, 30 years, gosh, I'm old now, since it's been published,
30.
has lost some of its punch because of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. Not because the Marvel Cinematic Universe exists, but because we now have seen real people in real environments and green screen environments actually living in the Marvel world. That was the fantasy of Marvel's. And yes, it has amazing key moments of Marvel's history in it too, but so much of the punch of it is Alex Ross's art, which is timeless and I have no argument against. But I just don't know if that has the same visceral level of impact now than it did 10, 20, or 30 years ago. And I don't know if it stands in anymore for having like other Marvel books in the collection. Whereas like 20 years ago in 2004, before all the MCU and in a much younger version of the Marvel universe, I would be like, hell yeah, have Marvels as like one of the few Marvel books you're maybe going to stock in your public library. Now, I think I would say that should be the History of the Marvel Universe book from a couple of years ago, which I think is more impactful and more fun for a modern reader of any age than Marvels.
I see. To me, Marvels wasn't about like, to go back to what Larry was saying, wasn't about like the breakdown of the superheroes. It was more about people, normal people reacting to the coming of the atomic age and the coming of these heroes. And I think that's what makes it really relatable. You don't have to know Gwen Stacy or Green Goblin. All you know is this young girl lost her life.
Well,
and
no,
there's
but
a
we have two
Marvels
books here that are about photojournalism, right? We've got Marvels and like Days of Stand, and I'm just saying that the Days of Stand photojournalism is like critical to a period in history, but the Marvels photojournalism in a way now feels dated because we've seen these same events documented in other ways.
So,
and I think Marvels would be much more appealing to a Gen X comic reader collector like me, or even older, because this is predicated on all of that, right? I mean, and like you said, the Marvel Cinematic Universe has kind of done that now, but updated it past where Marvel's was.
So I think personally, like the beautiful thing about Marvels, and we kind of touched upon it here, is it's about the way that like a regular person lives in New York, and like how do you come to like reconcile with the fact that like human beings, which, you know, it's coming from this very humanist position, you know, we are sort of displaced in this modern world. And it's ultimately, it's a very human story set among a superhero background, which we already have on this list with Astro City, because the whole beautiful thing about Astro City is it's not really a superhero book. It's a bunch of human stories that are set in the backdrop of this fantastic world. And so, I mean, at this point, I don't think Marvel's, Curtis is comparing it to sort of the photojournalistic take of that and Days of Sand. I'd really sort of argue the heart of Marvel's is just human stories set in a superhero world. And Astro City does that better. And I don't think you need to worry about sort of the history of the Marvel Universe background that you're going there, because ultimately it's how do we find the humanity here? And you got that in Astro City, also written by Kurt Busiek.
I'm going to just say that
Yeah.
Alex Ross is the big selling point of this too. And
yeah, you already got him on the cover. You already tricked him to open
on
it.
Astro City. Oh,
Yeah. He is a co-creator of that
I just
series.
like to
oh my gosh. Okay.
Omar, I think if you just look at this screen and if you just took everyone who reads comics and said one of these books is not like the other four, I mean, people could say that they prefer Marvels to Watchmen, but I just don't think it compares to like what you yourself have put up to the rest of it. I mean, it's got a nice nostalgic quality, but I think of it as one of the, so there's something in history which is groundbreaking for the time, and then people build on it, and then they do new things with it, and then it becomes kind of quaint and antiquated. And then there are certain things that stay timeless. I think about Watchmen and Marvels in that way, is that they were both like sort of nuclear explosions when they came out. But Watchmen, for me, continues to be powerful and dense and layered, and Marvel's, I mean, I've gotten everything from it that I could get from it. And there's so many things that have built. I mean, like Marvel's has one conceit, and then there are so many other series that have taken that conceit as the basic part of it and then done more stuff on top of it. It's kind of like those old board games that used to be really cool at one point of time, but now that entire board game is just one mechanic of a much larger board game, and that's the way Marvel's is. It's like Carcassonne or something without expansions.
It's really true.
But you're comparing it to Watchmen. It's such an unfair comparison, though.
No, I'm just comparing it to anything that takes a realistic approach to superheroes. As opposed to fantasy, as opposed to absolute fantasy. So the idea of Marvel's, and I think honestly, the one that has done what Marvel's did, like in a superior in a way, is Darwin Cook's New Frontier. That's the one I would, if you wanted to represent that kind of thing, that's the one I would say has a really good shot. But Marvel's just kind of feels like a very nice looking thing, but kind of frozen in history and not as important. I mean, I think it's the same way. People our age might think of it as very cool, but somebody today might be like, what's the big deal about this?
I love Marvels, but I feel like it's sort of a gift of love to someone like me that grew up in the Marvel universe. I mean, I feel like I have, because I've read those books for so many decades, and I'm so familiar with all of the stories that this is expanding on and showing you the other side. But I'm not sure it'd be as impactful for someone that's not from that background. But
this is really, these are some really interesting takes. The book has been countlessly reprinted. So I think it stands the test of time. I mean, it's a period piece. I don't think it's one of those outdated material. It's okay. Compared to Watchmen, Watchmen is a book that you can read over and over again and get more and more out of it every time you read it. I agree with that. But it's okay to have a fun book on the list that shows you the expanded universe of superheroes. There's nothing wrong with that. And I know Ms. Marvel does that too. But I wanted something maybe just a little bit more than just kids to gravitate towards. And I thought Marvel's, with the beautiful painted artwork, can do that, can bring people into comics that way.
Well, I want to talk about another book on this list that has levels that I think everybody in the chat right now is going off about. Like, Watchmen has levels. Watchmen is, more than just superhero. You read Watchmen, you get more and more every time. Yes, all true. Calvin and Hobbes is the same.
Calvin and Hobbes.
Calvin and Hobbes
Absolutely.
was this funny strip that many of us read as kids, many of us, and then when you read it as an adult, especially,
Oh my God.
Father's Day, when you read it as an adult with children, Wow. There are so many levels to it that you never got originally. And then also, I mean, it's a comic ultimately that mockingly, but not really mockingly, is about philosophy, right? There's a reason they're called Calvin and Hobbes. And I just think for a strip that exists so often extemporaneously, right? There's very limited continuity. There's some characters and some jokes that are ongoing, but it's really just so dense with intelligence and with humor and with meaning in such a way that you could just read it once a year your whole life, and it's like reading some kind of oracular book where it gives you a different message every time you read it. It's just a beautiful act of art.
I couldn't agree more. I love that book, that series, and my wife absolutely. We used to sit in bed reading comic strips together when we first got married, and my kids have read it, and looking at it from an adult's perspective is almost a little heartbreaking at times, because it's like I kind of miss that aspect of growing up and that childhood. Yeah, which is what made it so difficult. It's like, what strip is best represented to put on a list like this if it's collected in a graphic novel format? I am willing to lose out marbles, by the way. I'm okay with that.
You've come to peace with that?
I've come to peace with that.
I love it a lot. I really do. So I understand why.
But and that's the thing, right? It's not about what I love. It's also about like getting people to read. And that was kind of my mentality. And I love that we all came at these particular lists like from different angles. We all came, ready to fight for our things for different reasons. And I love that about this.
Yeah, I mean, I love it. Having led the charge against voting for it, it is a book that I love and I highly recommend. Like, we're talking about, I think there's only like one book on this whole list of slides that I am actively a non-fan of. And it's certainly not Marvel's. So I think here is how we're going to handle this. We're going to go back through the slides, and we're just, for each slide, I'm going to ask everybody on that slide to just say, would you put this on your reserve list or not? So like when we start with that first list of Bunk Master Ben's picks, I'll start by asking Larry, tell me what's on your reserve list. And we're just going to go through and we're going to see which books get the most reserved by the most number of the panel. You can reserve them for any reason you want, because you think it should be on the library, because we've personally convinced you it sounds cool. You do not have to reveal your reasoning.
To confirm,
so,
we only get
is everybody
10
ready?
Right. Our library only lets us have 10 borrows.
No. You don't have to limit to 10. You could vote for every single book on this whole stream if you want to.
Oh, okay.
So, Larry, which books are you reserving from Larry's library shelf? Or from Ben's? From Larry, which books are you reserving? Okay. This is when I go into my spreadsheet mode, and I'm no longer a person.
Okay, I would say Blankets and Bone, and that would be it.
Blankets and Bone. Okay. I, on this list, would reserve The Crimson Cage. I got sold on it hard. And I'm afraid that Blankets is a kissing book, but I'm going to vote for it anyway, on faith that you told me it's not just a kissing book. Kristen, what would you reserve from Ben's list?
Blankets and Bone for me as well.
Blankets and Bone. Curtis, what would you reserve from this list?
You're on mute, buddy. He said nothing. Nothing.
I'm just going to stick with Blankets and Bone.
Blankets and Bone.
Wow.
Maddie, what would you reserve from this list?
I feel like I'm a little more generous. Everything except for Batman Year One.
Okay. And Omar, what would you reserve from this list?
I'm
sorry, I skipped you on Schumann because I have you at the beginning of the alphabet. I'll get you in a moment.
Bone, Miss Marvel, and Batman Year One. I'm actually really shocked. Didn't get any votes. What's happening?
Right. And Anshuman, what would you reserve from this list?
Bone, for sure. Batman Year One, for sure. Probably Blankets. I'm tempted by The Crimson Cage. It's just I am, because I haven't heard of it, and it's just perfect. And you made it sound really good. But there are so many comics coming up as well. Yeah, Bone, Batman Year One. I'm one of those people who thinks Batman Year One is fantastic, and blankets. Yeah.
All right.
You're such a basic.
Wow. All right, now we're moving on to
I'm as surprised as you, Omar. I
thought it was a
really
shooter.
didn't get it. I mean, like, I
How
don't
is that
like
happening?
many Batman stories and Batman Year One. I mean, it's the art, David
It's-
Mazzucchelli's artwork,
Oh, it's
but
wonderful.
it's
All right.
it's a-
We're now moving on to Larry's bookshelf. Larry's bookshelf. So everybody already voted on blankets, so you do not have to talk about blankets again, whether it was a yes or a no. We've already seen it on a different list. So Bunk Master Ben, what are you reserving from Larry's list?
I'm grabbing Essex County, Days of Sand, and They Called Us Enemy.
Okay. I am grabbing Days of Sand, which I already own a copy of, so I guess I'll lend mine. And They Called Us Enemy. Kristen, what are you reserving from this list?
Essex County, and They Called Us Enemy.
Okay. Curtis, what are you reserving from this list?
Essex County, Days of Sand, and They Called Us Enemy.
Maddie, what are you reserving from this list?
No, I'm the muted one. That's so embarrassing. Same as Curtis. Essex County, Days of Sand. They call us enemy.
Ungshaman, what are you reserving from this list?
Essex County, Days of Sand. They Called Us Enemy.
All right. Very consistent group here. Omar, what are you reserving from this list?
Son of a bitch. Same. The Essex County Days of Sand, and They Called Us Enemy. This is gonna be difficult. Right.
They Called Us Enemy is now our first everybody on the panel endorsed it book of.
Whoa, nice job.
All right, on to my bookshelf. Bunk Master B, what are you reserving?
I'm going with Lumberjanes, March, and Superman Smashes the Klan.
Okay. Larry, my friend, what are you reserving for Larry's library from the Crisis shelf?
I would say March and Superman Smashes the Klan.
All right. Kristen, what are you reserving from the Crisis shelf?
Lumberjanes and March.
All right. Curtis, what are you reserving from the Crisis shelf?
I'm going to take all of them except for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Oh, the monster.
Maddie, what are you reserving from this shelf?
Lumberjanes, March, and Superman Smashes the Klan.
Ungshaman, what are you reserving from this shelf?
If it's Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, does Omar have to buy every volume for the library?
No.
No? All right. In that case, I'm leaving it out. March and Superman Smashes the Klan.
All right. And Omar, to wrap it up, what are you reserving from my shelf?
March and Superman Smashes the Klan.
March is now our second universally picked book.
Doesn't mean it will make it. We'll see.
All right. So now we move on to Kristen's list. Kristen's list, keep in mind, we've already talked about Bone. We've already talked about Essex County. We've already talked about Lumberjane. So I only need to hear from everybody when I ask you about On a Sunbeam and Ghost World. So Bunk Master, from On a Sunbeam and Ghost World, what are you reserving either of those books?
I'm reserving On a Sunbeam, and I'm taking Ghost World away, and I'm putting it somewhere so no one else can take it out.
He's shoving it in a different section.
Yeah.
Never do that. Once you touch the book, it's like touching a bird that fell out of its nest, but actually that's false. But in a library, once you touch the book, you put it on the reshelving cart because librarians keep track of what's circulating even within the library. Do not put it back on the shelf unless you're just there and you like look at it and you're standing right there and then you slide it back in. Once you have walked away from the shelf, that's possession and you have to put it back on the cart. Okay? Do you understand?
Yeah.
All right. Larry, what are you reserving from On a Sunbeam and Ghost World?
Both of those.
Excellent. I am reserving On a Sunbeam hard. Curtis, what are you reserving?
Both, please.
Okay. Maddie, what are you reserving? You already picked On a Sunbeam.
That's true. I want to read Ghost World after she talked about it.
Okay. Ungshaman,
I trust Kristen implicitly. So
what are you reserving?
On a Sunbeam and Ghost World.
Okay. And Omar, what are you reserving?
On a Sunbeam.
On a Sunbeam is our third universally picked book.
It's a
Now
great
we're
book.
moving on to
that's all that
Curtis's
matters now.
list. Bunk Master, what are you reserving from Curtis's shelf, knowing that we've also got Lone Wolf and Cub on Cub and Cub on Unctionman's list in a moment, but it's here on Curtis's list as well.
Give me understanding Wait, no, I said that's a free roll, so I'm
Free roll. That's on me.
purposely not voting for that one. Give me Lone Wolf, Complete Life and Times, and simply for the strength of Curtis's argument, for better or for worse.
Wait, you said Complete Life and Times?
Or
no.
Karl Barks, the Uncle
Karl.
Scrooge.
Complete Karl Barks.
Got it. All right, Larry, what are you reserving from this shelf?
The last three: Lone Wolf, Karl Barks, and For Better or Worse.
All right. I am reserving Lone Wolf and Cub. I think I have to say Terry and the Pirates because I want to read it now. Karl Barks because my child wants to read it, and For Better or for Worse because I truly adore it. Kristen.
Complete Karl Barks.
All right. Maddie.
I'm gonna say Lone Wolf and For Better or for Worse.
Unctionman.
Terry and the Pirates, Lone Wolf, and Uncle Scrooge.
Uncle Scrooge. Omar.
Lone Wolf and Uncle Scrooge.
Lone Wolf and Uncle Scrooge. All right. Wait, Maddie, I'm not trying to re-legislate your picks. I just am afraid I missed one. Can you say what your reserves were again?
Lone Wolf and then For Better or for Worse.
Got it. Okay. All right, now we move on to Unctionman's list. Keep in mind, we already just talked about Lone Wolf and Cub. Bunk Master, what are you reserving from Unctionman's list?
You mean mine?
Maddie's. There
Oh,
we
Maddie, sorry. Maddie's
Right.
next. Maddie's next.
Maddie, okay, just making sure.
All right, and we've already talked about On a Sunbeam. So, Bunk Master, what are you reserving from Maddie's list?
I'm going with Upgrade Soul. I'm sorry, I wasn't a Sheets fan.
Okay. Larry, what are you reserving from Maddie's shelf?
Upgrade Soul and Sheets.
I am reserving Sheets, Oh Human Star, and Upgrade Soul. I am not a big Monstrous fan. Kristen.
Sheets and Oh Human Star.
Okay. Curtis.
Upgrade Soul and Monstrous.
Oh, Curtis.
Unctionman.
Well, I haven't read Sheets or Human Star, so not sure. But Upgrade Soul, no Monstrous.
Okay. And Omar.
Sheets and Upgrade Soul.
Wow, Upgrade Soul. The non-pitch of a pitch, not telling us this about has intrigued us all. Okay,
No.
Now we come to Unctionman's list, finally. And again, we've already legislated Lone Wolf and Cub. Ben, what are you reserving from his shelf?
Clean sweep.
All right.
Yeah.
Larry, what are you reserving from the shelf?
Eternaut.
Oh gosh, I'm not ready. I think it's a clean sweep for me as well. Kristen.
I'm going with Usagi.
All right. Curtis.
Do I get to vote for Lone Wolf and Cub even though it was on my list?
Well, it's already it was voted upon as part of.
Oh, it voted already. Okay. I'm going for all of the above.
All right. Maddie.
I'm gonna say Eternaut. So I'm probably saying wrong. Astro City Usagi Yojimbo.
All right. And Omar.
Eternaut and Usagi.
Whew. Okay. Now we come to Omar's list. Omar's got quite a shelf here, Bunkmaster. What are you reserving from Omar's shelf?
So, as much crap as we gave him, you gotta have Watchmen. Give me Watchmen, give me Mouse, and give me Calvin and Hobbes.
Okay. Larry.
I think Mouse and Calvin and Hobbes.
I reserve Watchmen, Mouse, Akira, and Calvin and Hobbes. Kristen.
Just Mouse for me.
Curtis.
Akira and Calvin and Hobbes.
Maddie.
Because I want it to still have some love, even though it was like a big list. Marvel, and Mouse.
All right. And Unctionman to wrap up the reserving round.
Watchman Mouse Akira Calvin.
All right, folks, do something incredibly entertaining while I tabulate the votes.
Some dances or
All right. Thank you all so much for watching, and smash that like button, please. And I want to thank my panelists again for joining me. And I know it's taken a long time to do this. It's not an easy task. And I know it's taking time out of their day, and it's Father's Day, and not all of us live in the same time zone. So thank you all so much for being here. And despite of what happens with this list, I can't believe these monsters voted out Marvels. What the hell? Okay, that's fine. You know, it's okay. It's okay.
I just want to get some props for not putting in Superman versus Meshi as a bit. I just think that's
I'm honestly
really Joker 1, Operation Joker.
It's really big of me not to put that on the list.
I'm honestly surprised you have not. You were the one that
book so much.
Didn't bring any manga in. Like
it's because they're too long. And I just couldn't. I mean, I'm like, oh, buy Monster. Well, we'll get here's the first volume. Good luck. Find the rest.
We're gonna reveal the 10 in this stream. We have to decide what books make it. That's so.
Omar,
if we ever do a manga evergreen, I think that would be interesting.
It would be fun. Yes, sir.
Are you going to get the March, like the box set? Because
I
there
do.
are 3 volumes in a slipcase.
I'll donate
for the library.
That.
Yeah,
I don't mind. Because they're all great books.
Yeah.
And
Again, I cannot emphasize my kid could not be torn. I know I'm counting votes, but she could not be torn away from it. I kind of thought like, oh, she'll read it and be a little interested. No, I was so surprised. She's obsessed with it. So I just really, I don't know. It was just heartening to see that like it works for a 10-year-old.
There for a minute, I really thought that book by Ben, The Crimson Cage, was going to be my Phoenix of this particular stream.
Once I heard people voting for it, I got legitimately sad that it didn't make it.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm happy to buy one of those books too. I'm happy to contribute.
Yeah, man, I'm in. All these
it's
books.
Also an AMA upshot, so it's only $10 for the trade. So that's really why people aren't buying it for the library, because everyone's just buying it.
Damn it! I should have voted for that. And buying one of these out of print books. I did consider God Loves Man Kills. As a matter of fact, on my it took me 3 months to put my list together. Like I put a lot of thought and love into it. Like, and then also the hard part was taking a step back and not making it about me, like my personal things. And I wish I had thought about what Anshuman had said about, like, you know, opening people's eyes to a whole new world of books that are out there from other countries. I think that was great. I thought about it a little bit, but because I had some manga in there, but not representing like Europe and things like that, or even South America where I'm from. But I think we did. We
did we have any European?
Isn't that book published in Spain?
Days of Sand. Days of Sand was. Oh yeah, Paracuelos.
Dutch.
Yeah, that's a Spanish book, isn't it?
Paracuelos is. I think Days of Sand is a Dutch comic.
Dutch book. That's a Dutch book. Yeah.
Yeah. So we had a couple of European books in there.
All right, we represented everybody but Australia and South Africa.
Sorry, I did not come through with any New Zealand picks, folks.
The worst. You're the worst.
Foot rot flats.
Yeah.
And
I'm working. We've got some things to talk about.
You keep working.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see what people left off, because like I made a list of 10 first and narrowed it down. It's like I was going to put in May's books. I think that's great.
It's a good one.
It's Lonely at the Center of the Earth is one of my favorite graphic novels I've read in the past few years. It was hard not to put that on there. It's just like an artistic wonder for me. And then a couple of like smaller books like Snapdragon and, you know, Heartstopper. I think somebody brought that up in the chat.
Oh wow! None of us picked Heartstopper.
Okay, so I have my top 10. Do you have the?
Nobody picked Sandman. That was on my list that would have been 12. What was your top 10, Curtis? What did you have, buddy?
Yeah. So the 5 that I had to cut from my list were Sandman, Fun Home, Bone, Usagi Yojimbo, and all of the books by Raina Telgemeier.
Those are top sellers, though. I mean, those were the #1 graphic novels for a long time.
Yeah.
So you had Sandman and Fun Home.
The impeccable taste.
Yeah.
Angshuman, did you have 10?
I had 50 I had a
I just want to see your list.
I have a list
Just-
over
just-
here that says autobiography. Then I have a list that says biography. And then I have a list that says intersection of biography and autobiography, like Mouse, because part of it is someone else's story and all that kind of stuff. So I have too many lists. But
Can you just send me
but I
that list later? Because I just want to see it.
Sure. But I did feel bad leaving out Joe Sacco's comics because they were very important to me, and I discovered them in a library. And I didn't know journalism could be done in comics before reading Palestine and Safe Area Gorajda. But I would have probably picked a footnote in Gaza for this list if I had gotten to choose 10 the way that Omar got to. For
Wait,
his
wait.
video.
You don't have to throw me under the bus anymore. That was a previous episode, and I narrowed it down to 5. Yeah, it's really difficult to condense them, right? Because it's like you almost feel like you're betraying your loves. Like, oh, I have to put that on this list. That's one of my personal favorite books of all time. What about you, Kristen? Did you have 10 that you were like, oh, I gotta get it in there? Like, what was the one that broke your heart that you couldn't make it in the top 5?
I think the first one that comes to mind is like genderqueer, because it's been challenged so many times in libraries right now. It's been a huge one. And I do love that book. So
Who's the publisher on that book?
oh my gosh, I think it's Oni Press, I think.
Okay. I think you're right. I think it is Oni Press. I know Top Shelf has a lot of great books I wanted to add on the list, as well as Oni Press. Like, these like different publishers that aren't Marvel or DC, which I love that people came here with. Like Larry really surprised me with his picks. Like, I'm really proud of him. But I found out later that it's really Kristen's picks, and she dominated.
Totally not. She
Kristen's
didn't
real good.
tell me any of her picks.
Oh, okay.
But I made
She
you
didn't
read
tell.
most of those books.
Good. That's good. I love that you
That's
are
fair.
now
That's fair.
influencing your father to read things instead of Roy Thomas. So that's nice. That's
Yeah, we
nice.
got some good ones in the chat, like Judge Dredd. After reading that, I want to read more of that.
I
Some
know,
sort of-
Maddie. What happened?
God, I really liked it. I was reading with
Yeah,
Joe.
my daughter loves Judge Dredd.
Oh my gosh, yeah, loved it. T-Dragon Society.
They just
Oh,
released
I
the
love
Treasury
that. But that to
edition.
me is more of a storybook. Like I like had it in my hands in my daughter's room, and I was like, is it a comic? Like I just wasn't sure.
If you were
It's a
saying like
comic.
if this was kids comics Evergreen, easily
Oh,
T-Dragon
100%.
Society.
Yeah.
No question.
May I
That's a
ask
good
a
one.
question on this topic? Would you classify Shel Silverstein as comics or not?
No.
Never in
No.
the comic
I was-
section.
Illustrated books?
He's always in the children's section. Or
No, like
illustrated.
I meant, would you classify it when you look at it, and if you have a story in which the same character, it's sequential.
Oh.
I mean, it may not have panels, but it's sequential down a page as well. You have
Huh.
movement of time, you have narrative, you've got a
That- that is-
combination
I think
of
it's
text
close,
and
but
illustration.
it's not a comic.
Yeah, I wonder why though, because my instinct is to say no, and yet Chris and I have reviewed many what we consider children's comic books that aren't that different, even just like in the way they're collected. So I don't know why I would say no to that, but yes to other things.
I feel
Because of
like
Maddie's
understanding comics comes into play here, right?
Yeah.
But understanding comics actually has like sequential art though, whereas like
No, I mean like it'll teach you what the difference is.
Oh, yes,
versus
yes,
an
thank you.
illustrated story versus
Oh,
a
well,
comic.
I haven't read it, so I'm convinced after this.
Well,
to,
Well, I mean, understanding
right,
comics says that a
Omar.
single panel can't be a comic, but there are several Shel Silverstein stories in which you have multiple images.
Right.
So
Mhm.
it's not the
You're
same
right.
thing of a single
And-
image. And they're
and
sequenced, so you can see the
this is-
walk, you can see the run or the fall.
um
Just curious, because it's a question that many people, like to debate.
and it's definitely one that my favorite book of all time is The Giving Tree, like of all time, no matter what I've read.
Yeah.
That is my favorite.
It's
book
in my top 5, probably. Top 5, top
We
10.
outlawed that when we became parents, and people like gifted to us. We're like, no, and we put it on the top shelf. It's an amazing book, but it's just so emotionally devastating.
It's sad. Yeah.
It's like it's not one of
It's
those
so
books that
true.
when your kids are like 2 and they're like, read it again, read it again.
What's the other kid's book that breaks my heart? The one about the son that gets older and is like having to
Oh,
carry
yes.
his mom when she gets
Oh.
older. As
I
an adult.
love you forever. I think is it.
That's
what
it.
it's called?
Yeah, I did not allow that book in my house because I'm like, I'm not gonna cry reading this to my
the Little
kids.
Prince. The
Oh,
Little
all right,
Prince is
Omar,
up there.
we I regret to inform your wallet that we have a very obvious top 14 because all that it was, there were a handful of books we universally voted for, and then all the other ones were books that only one person didn't vote for. So I don't think we can fairly tiebreak that.
Okay,
You know,
well,
let's see.
let me get the super chat first because of Wonder
All
Maddie's recommendation. I bought the hardcover collector's edition of Upgrade Soul thinking it is good. Going into it completely blind is the way to do it. All right, I'm going to present the screen right here. So the Evergreen Library books are Upgrade Soul, Blankets, Days of Sand, March, Book 1, Lone Wolf and Cub, Superman Smashes the Klan, Uncle Scrooge, The Eternaut, Bone, Essex County, Usagi Yojimbo, On a Sunbeam, Mouse, and They Called Us Enemy.
I love this list. I think
so.
it's great.
I love this list too, but realistically, libraries have budgets. So if I give my friend this list, she's gonna be like, "There's 14 here. We have to decide what goes, guys." I'm so sorry because I'm thinking about it from the library. I don't mind donating these. You know what? I will donate these 14 books. I don't mind that at all. But I think we have to think about it. Like if I'm sharing this list with a librarian and they have a limited budget and they can only have 10 books, what are those 10 books?
Well, let me put a star on the ones that we universally voted for because I don't think we should be allowed to eliminate those.
Okay, and I'm completely good with that. And I can even get the chat involved.
Yeah, because the first consideration I have is if any of these have multiple volumes.
Or what if we let the chat decide of the 4 that we didn't universally vote for, or those spots, like we let the chat decide those last ones and get them involved.
Well, let me think about how to do that. Let me see what Peter's got first, and then.
All right, you gotta give me a minute.
I promise I will get the chat involved because this is a group thing.
Because with Evergreens, don't you do like a poll?
I do, but it's usually the poll of we have 2 books that are 50-50. Which book do you want added to the list? Not a poll of which books do you remove, because we would have to do them one by one almost if there's 4 choices. So I wish there was an easier way to do that. But this is an excellent list.
I'm proud of us.
Wait, Watchmen didn't make the list?
Oh, now Omar. Now the truth is dawning on Omar.
I got everything I wanted.
The only
library will already have that one.
Yeah, they all have Watchmen.
You all stop. You don't know what libraries have.
Yeah, we do.
I don't think we do in Frankfort. I don't think we have Watchmen in Frankfort.
We do.
I know for sure we don't have Usagi Yojimbo.
We've got it at the local library. We got it at the college library.
Oh, you live
in big Omar, if you reload, you will see which ones everybody voted for. They now have a little sun mark on them.
Oh, okay.
I know when we're in the slide presentation, there's no way to refresh it unless you go out and go back.
Sucks. Okay, so presenting, and here we go. Okay, so no matter what, we cannot vote these books off. So the 4 that made it are Blankets, March, On a Sunbeam, and They Called Us Enemy. Those 4 are for sure staying.
And again, all of these books, 7 out of 8 of us went for. So it's not like there was a lot of
and they're all good books.
So let's start here. Is there any book here that somebody didn't vote for that now they're willing to reserve?
Well, or can we rescind our vote?
No, yeah, you could rescind a vote too and knock one out of contention.
Sure. Why don't we do it one by one? Upgrade Souls, yes or no? Right? Would that be the quickest way possible? So the person
who did not pick Upgrade Soul was Kristen. So Kristen, would you turn into a yes?
Well, which is funny because I'm the one who told Maddie to read it, and then she told everybody else to read it, and I told my dad to read it. However, I knew we needed to narrow this down, so I wasn't trying to reserve everything. So of course, I'll pick that. Sure, let's put it in.
All right. So then, Upgrade Soul is on the shelf. Days of Sand. The one dissenter on Days of Sand was Kristen. Also, Kristen.
I don't care. Put it in. I just haven't read it. So I'm like,
Well, and that was going to be my reasoning for rescinding my vote on Upgrade Soul because I haven't read it. So from that standpoint, I can't really recommend it because I haven't read it at all.
Yeah, Omar, I think we're going to do who would rescind a vote, because if we just talk about who would add a vote, everybody's going to say yes at this point.
Oh, yeah,
so
yeah,
Upgrade
right.
Soul. Curtis, are you rescinding your Upgrade Soul vote?
Yes, I'm going to rescind my Upgrade Soul vote.
All right, so Upgrade Soul is one of our evergreen picks, but Omar is not putting on the list for his local library. Days of Sand, is anybody rescinding a vote? Okay, Lone Wolf and Cub, is anybody rescinding a vote?
Hold on a second. I'm just looking at the rest of the list.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh God, I think I have to. Yeah, I will for Days of Sand.
Okay, so now we are 2 down. We need to have 2 more out. Lone Wolf and Cub, is anybody rescinding a vote?
Did I vote for it?
I'll
rescind mine.
Ooh, okay, Lone Wolf and Cub, the third
Only
one now.
because- only because, okay, listen, I think it's fantastic. Oh, literally the only reason is multiple volumes. So in one way, by recommending that they have it or buying it for them, they are then going to have to buy more volume.
But that's okay. That's what a library's for. I'm okay with
What?
that.
But you talk about the budget.
And you don't need to have every volume. It's fine
Yeah,
standalone.
because volume 27, like it's a standalone.
Bone is 9 volumes.
Oh, stop.
Well,
But you can get it all in one volume. You can get Bone all in one
Uncle
volume. though.
Scrooge.
We have
Uncle
potentially
Scrooge by
3
Karl
that are
Barks
leaving
is
the
over
list.
16 hardcover volumes.
Guys,
But again, they're all standalone, 100% standalone.
Right.
Yeah.
Superman
yeah.
Smash the Clan. Is anybody going to rescind their vote for that?
I would rather keep Lone Wolf instead of Superman Smashes the Clan.
Yeah, well,
All right,
Right,
well,
just
Superman
so
Smashes the Clan potentially on the cutting room floor here. Uncle Scrooge. Would anybody rescind an
I'll
Uncle Scrooge
rescind
vote?
Superman. I'll rescind Superman.
All right. So that's potentially our 4. But to be fair, let's talk about them all. Would anybody go rescind an Uncle Scrooge reservation? All right, that's a no. Would anybody rescind their Eternaut reservation? All right, that's a no. Would anybody rescind their Bone reservation? All right, that's a no. Would anybody rescind their Essex County reservation? All right, that's a no. Would anybody rescind their Usagi Yojimbo reservation? And would anybody rescind their Mouse reservation? Well, I do think it's somewhat suspicious that it was the first 4, but we have our answer. If Omar needs to trim this down to 10, we would omit Upgrade Soul, Days of Sand, Lone Wolf and Cub, and Superman Smashes the Clan. I cannot believe you guys took Lone Wolf and Cub off the wall.
I can't believe you Lone
I
Wolf and
can't
Cub
believe
either.
that.
Like, okay, I'm gonna Peter. Can you give us the final screen, and then I'm gonna stop sharing.
All right. Hold on.
Let me get
I
this
get too scared to say anything on these live streams.
Take out
I think-
Essex County on a Sunbeam, Days of Sand, and Superman Smashes the Clan upset. Well, 2 of those were taken off. So you kind of got 50-50 shot there. No manga, no superhero really is breaking my heart. Like, actually, it's kind of breaking my heart and my brain. We couldn't even get Astro City in there.
We know who to blame for that.
Yeah, Bunk Master B, right? Was that guy?
Excuse
So
me?
I think
Which one,
Lone Wolf and Cub was only on the chopping block because one person didn't vote for it. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah.
Well, that was
Right.
all of them.
Right. May I know
Yeah, that was
who
the
it was
case for
that
any
didn't vote
chopping
for
block.
Lone Wolf and Cub? I was just
I
asking for a
voted for
friend.
it.
I don't remember. Who was it that didn't vote for
I
Lone
did
Wolf and
not
Cub?
because of the font.
Oh,
Because,
fonts
like,
are important.
That's a tiny
Font.
font.
If that's a concern, then my vote would change, because I do not like hard to read fonts. So I would have rescinded my vote had I known that.
Okay, interesting.
Are you talking about the size of the font?
Yes, the size.
For the
Then you should
in
have
the
all
new
voted.
omnibuses?
You should have all voted
Or
for
are you
Terry and the
talking about
Pirates. Then.
That's $100 book, man.
All right, Omar, if you reload the slide now, it has segregated out the ones that we're waffling on.
Okie dokie. Let me share the screen. Slideshow mode and share it. So, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, everybody out there, this is the final 10 books I am sending. Blankets.
That's a pretty solid list. That's
I
really
gotta
good.
agree.
Very good.
On a Sunbeam, They Call Us Enemy, Uncle Scrooge, The Eternaut, Bone, Watchmen, Usagi Yojimbo, and Mouse. There you have it.
Watchmen's on the list.
What's that?
You know what I love about it is it feels, I know we struggle with this on a lot of the Evergreen shows, that we tend to like trend really recent, or we tend to trend based on like the kind of taste of the panel. This to me legitimately feels like, wow, here are 10 really significant comics. Yes, it starts pretty much like in the 90s. No, there's a couple older ones on there too. It feels pretty representative of like, you could do a lot worse than exposing all of your library patrons to these 10 books. There's no WTF Phoenix Omnibus pick in this group.
I thought there was going to be. But
There's still time to
I
vote
will say,
back in.
you know,
At least we ended up with one book written by a woman.
That's what I was gonna
So
say. Yeah.
at the very least,
Got
we
one in there.
we got one.
I voted for Ms. Marvel. I didn't hear anybody else vote for Ms. Marvel.
It was on my list.
Days of Sand got taken out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Calvin and Hobbes got taken out. I just realized that. You are hurting me.
There's so many of the books that got 6 out of the 8 votes, which on any normal Evergreen stream would be enough to get in. But on this stream, it was so intense, and there were so many books that 6 out of 8s. Here's the 6 out of 8s included Calvin and Hobbes. That might have been the only one that got 6. Everything else was 5. So yeah, Calvin and Hobbes just missed.
If any librarian, who had like an extra budget looked at this stream and took from everybody's list, they'd have a fantastic plethora of books to choose from. I think.
Yep, absolutely.
Regardless, everyone's picks were great. Like I've introduced some new books I want to check out now. Like it's such. I'm really happy that it was so diverse because I was not expecting that. Because if you look on most lists online, it's the same 10 every time. But
just out of
you gathered a
curiosity,
good group here, Omar.
Angshiman's videos for the Lone Wolf and Cub manga are phenomenal. Maybe these people should have watched that before voting Lone Wolf and Cub out.
There is a gallery edition, and the font over there is huge. So
okay, we'll check out
put
the
it back with the gallery edition.
I love that. That's what took it out. I agree with what Maddie said. I'm really proud of our list. It's really surprising that there is no single Marvel or DC book. Almost one DC book made it.
Yeah.
Because
Marvel and DC is such a small portion of the global landscape of comics, and there's so much to offer that I think people who get stuck in just Marvel and DC are missing out on a ton of amazing books.
Absolutely, 100%. And people that can't read black and white always kill me. They kill me. Some of my favorite comics are in black and white, and I'm like, please try. Or people that don't like trade paperbacks, and I get it. Hardcovers are amazing and nice, but there's so many good stories out there that are only in trades. Because, like as Kristen said, a lot of these people are self-publishing. It's expensive to publish a book in hardcover format. Yeah, no.
Majority of our top 10 is in black and white, actually.
Yeah, you're right. Well, I guess,
or at least
Bone
like
and
limited
Usagi
color
can be in color.
Well, and I guess there's a new color edition of They Called Us Enemy as well.
Oh, that's right. There is. They just published that a couple of years ago. I should have chosen different guests. No, I love my guests. I love a difference of opinion. I think they came in with some strong defending words, and that was, okay. A couple of books surprised me that didn't make it, but I'm okay with this. I'm happy with the list we curated.
I'm just glad Great Soul made it this far. I was not expecting to go anywhere.
I didn't expect that one to go that with your pitch too. Your pitch, I don't want to tell you what it's about.
I feel so strongly about that book.
And then Peter was like, it looks like a weird Teletubby. I was like, oh, this is not gonna make it.
That's what I think about every time Maddie shows me the cover of that book. All I can think of is like Teletubbies in disguise.
It's a hard sell.
Oh, you need to revisit that. And what was it, Curtis? What haven't you read that Maddie suggested?
All of her picks, actually, except for I can't remember, but 4 out of 5 of her picks I hadn't read. And I've only haven't read 6 of the titles of all of these titles.
Oh.
I haven't read 6 of them, and 4 of them were
That's
Maddie's.
incredible.
I am going to do one more thing. I said I would throw in the Understanding Comics.
True.
So I'm going to let the chat decide which one of the 4 books makes it into the top 11 then. So then one more book is snuck in there. And I can donate that one too. Okay. So
Chat, just go ahead and put low one cub up there.
Yeah.
I'll buy Upgrade Soul for the life.
You never
Well, I
maybe
don't know,
people
Superman
that are
Smash
watching right now
Japan.
don't like manga. You never know. So let me start a poll. I think I can do 4 options. Let me Superman smashes. And I'm also limited to how many freaking letters I can put in here too.
Also, I can't type in. I'm glad for this, but I kept trying to type in, "Oh, I love Superman smashes a clam" when you had it in your list, and it would not let me. It was like, "Whoa, you're not allowed to type this in the chat." I was like, okay.
Is it Smash or Clan? What's
It's-
YouTube have a problem with?
You can
It's
write
Clan, yeah. They wouldn't let me do it either. Okay, I got to sign off. I'm taking my kids to a movie, but I got to go. But I've really appreciated being on this live stream. It was so great. Thanks for inviting me, and thanks for all of you for contributing some amazing books and amazing conversation. It's been really a blast.
Nice
Love you,
meeting
buddy. I will
Great.
see you. I hope later this week. But you go and work. You go. I know you go and be with your kids. It's Father's Day. Go be with your kids.
That's right. See you later.
Bye, buddy. All right, I'm starting the poll for anybody that is still watching, and even the panelists can go and vote for one book to be added, so it'll be a top 11 list. So yeah, please, if you're watching this live right now, you can do it on your phone. I'm gonna go and vote. I'm gonna go and vote right now. You just go to the live chat, the little poll will pop up, and then you can vote for one book. Larry, don't create another account so you can vote for Days of Sand again. Oh, this is tough. All these books are solid.
I know. I thought I was like, oh, great, the poll. I'll just go on there and slam my vote in. And then I looked at it and I said, oh, no.
So I'm going to leave it up for just a couple more minutes as we're starting the sign off here. And I just want to thank again my panelists and everybody that is watching. If you were here for the beginning, oh my gosh, you've been here for hours. Thank you all so much. Thank you to the people for the super chats that will definitely help out paying for the books. And
huge thanks to Nick from Dynamite for dropping that Ben Franklin on this.
Nick's all about literacy, man. He's all about graphic literacy. So, and also if you saw a book here, or if you have a book that did not make it on the list, I strongly recommend donating that book to your local library, so you get other people hooked on graphic novels. So I'm going to leave it up for a couple more minutes.
If you loved, like all of we did, the words that Angshiman was talking about for comics, go over to For the Love of Comics and subscribe, where you can find so many more words about great comics.
Couldn't have said it better.
It was great. Thank you so much, everyone. It was. I mean, it's 3:30 in the morning now, and I'm ready to go for another couple of hours. No, I'm wide awake. I mean, after this, I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm so wired up.
So I am going to let you all start signing off as I leave the poll up for just a couple more minutes, because I also told my wife I would be eating dinner at this time.
Yeah, I ordered pizza while we're sitting here because I was like, we're gonna be here a while.
So I'll go from the top. Bunk Master, who are you? Where can people find you, buddy?
As you know, I'm still the same person I was 3 hours ago, back when we were young boys and girls here, finding our way in the comics world before we became grizzled veterans. Bunk Master B, you can find me by clicking on the link that James just put there. I make videos about books that people don't search for on YouTube, so perfect for these recommendations here.
Love it. Larry's Library. What about you, buddy?
Yep, I am Larry's Library on YouTube, also on Instagram. I don't do a whole lot there though. Yeah, I've got new videos every Monday and more sprinkled throughout. So check it out if you want to see more of my picks and profiles of books I have. I do high resolution scans from the pages, so you get to get a good look at the artwork.
Thank you, Larry. And really quick, because a few other people, you people are so wonderful, have been asking, is there another option for donations to get around the YouTube super chat cut? I mean, I'm sure there is. I just haven't figured it out. But if
Probably Ko-fi, but it wouldn't be.
Yeah,
but highlight it.
But take what you were going to donate and donate it to your local library.
Yeah.
Thank you
If
so
you're-
much.
If you're looking for the best way to help support the channel, there's always the Patreon, where you can, where more money can go to help Omar on a recurring basis, and you don't just give that money and get to see your comment flash, but you get noticeable perks. Like you get to be part of a monthly AMA, you get to be part of a book club, you get to be part of a Discord, depending on that. There's tons of content that's out there. If you love what you saw here, you'll love being a patron, and it helps more money go in Omar's pocket to make better content than what you do just with the super chats.
Oh, thank you so much. Man, that pitch was so much
Can we
better
just
than
get Bunk Master to record personal commercials for all,
Yeah,
for all
let's
of
get
us?
this pitch. That was really good, man.
I thought I'd give heartfelt testimonials, but the gravitas, the voice.
I say the words for other people who are too modest to say those things about themselves.
Oh,
As it
you're
should
so
be,
kind.
yeah.
Peter, what about you, my brother? Where are you? Where can people
I am
find
on crushingcrisis.com, where I talk primarily about Marvel and DC books, which is why I was so excited to be here today and talk about indie comics. I talk about new releases every week and help contextualize them for you so you understand, can I pick this up? Will I like this? And then, of course, I talk about how to collect the vast history of the Marvel Comics universe and a good deal of the DC universe as well.
Thank you for that, John. Kristen, what about you? The Comic Slayer. Where can people find
you?
you?
Can find me at the Comic Slayer on YouTube. We're talking about mostly non-Big Two books, sometimes some Big Two books. And I have a show with Mary M, who you may know from the chat. Every Thursday night, we talk about our reading update, what we've read within the week. And I'll also be over there still crying about Peter's comment about Lemire. I'm severely wounded, and I'll never get over it. Thank you.
Hey man, any Evergreen stream where I can kill the chances of a Jeff Lemire book, I'm happy to do so.
I love it. I love it. Maddie, where can people find you?
Hi, you can find me here on Tuesdays live on Omar New Reader at 8 p.m. Eastern. I also do a show with Kristen, typically on Sundays on the Omnibus Collectors Network at 11 a.m. Eastern, but sometimes that changes because we are busy people. And, I'm on Instagram and Twitter doing photography stuff. So, yeah.
Thank you. And last but not least, sir, who are you? Where can people find you and your beautiful voice?
Thank you. I'm here on YouTube. This is really the only place I hang out. I have some Instagram, but on YouTube I make comics videos, and this was a fantastic live stream, and I'm really happy with this list because now looking at this, I have on my channel 5 videos on Bone, I think 11 videos on Usagi Yojimbo. I have a video on Upgrade Soul, Days of Sand, Superman Smashes the Clan, Lone Wolf. So I mean, this is fantastic. If you like this kind of stuff, check out my channel, which is a very small channel, but I've loved being on YouTube and finding new people to chat with amongst. Like this one being a shining example of that. I hope I'm invited back, Omar. I hope you don't take all the things I said too personally. And I hope you have me back very soon.
You know I'm gonna have you back, brother. You know I'm gonna have you
It
back.
was
And
great.
Thank you, Elon.
Thank
you
you.
for the super chat, buddy. And I knew this was gonna come and bite me in the butt. Evening, just catching up on this. Omar trying to kill Astro, dead to me. Yeah, Tyler's been working on that Astro big book for a while. I'm so sorry. I mean, but it was up against Marvels, man. I'm a Marvel guy. All right, I'm going to end the poll and call it a day, everybody. Thank you so much for voting. And the chat has voted for...
Oh, if you reload the slide, it is all ready to present, my friend.
Ready. You were ready. Okay.
Come on, Lone Wolf. Come on, Lone Wolf.
And let me add it again. Oh, and Curtis isn't here to see it.
Yeah.
Such a shame. All right. Window. Here is the final list, everybody. Thank you so much for participating, for being here. The universal picks. Nice. Look at that, Peter. All of those got 100% of the votes from the panel. And then you all voted for Lone Wolf and Cub. to be added here. And yes, I get to sneak in one more because I like spending money for a good purpose, for a good cause. But this is the final list. So thank you all so much. Screen grab that. Go to donate some books to your local library. Even if you know teachers that have libraries in their classroom, by all means, please do that. But that is it for us, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. And again, thank you to my wonderful panel. I got to go and eat dinner with my kids and my dad who's here. So everybody have a
Take
wonderful
care.
evening. Stay healthy and safe, and much luck to you all.
Bye.